Refresh your page. It should show up. There it is. There it is. We are there. Let's see.
Lightwave integration is the most recent one.
Well, you probably have to. You probably have an advertisement coming up first.
Yeah, there's an advertisement on now.
All right, so you have to wait till it's over. I've got I have a paid subscription to Twitch. When you became an Amazon Prime member, they gave you a subscription to Twitch free.
Huh. Wow. Okay, there I see it now. I see your Amazon.
Yeah, Amazon too. And then there is my. Let's see. This is the Photoshop Users Group website. Let me make sure I'm there. Yeah. And that's the website, but it's the Facebook page, and then we've got my Behance page.
Cool.
Let's see. What is your website again?
DanielGrovePhoto.com. Looks like it's about 5 to 10 seconds behind. I was just curious.
Oh yeah, it will be.
Yeah.
Now
for a lot of servers.
the reason now for anybody's on, and maybe let's see who's online now. Okay. We've got D. Let's see. Yeah, DD Bell 23, welcome, and Lil Shark, welcome. Mike Picks, welcome. We're doing a little bit of a test right now. We'll start at 10 o'clock promptly. We got about 12 minutes until we actually stream.
Cool.
Everybody will be jumping on here. Sure, Daniel Grove Photography, cool. I am going to go ahead and let me go to my here, go to Facebook real quick and send another quick little Facebook message that we are live on. Mm-hmm. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to, on Facebook, I'm not going to give the link to the Eventbrite. I'm going to give the link directly to StreamYard. No, it's not StreamYard. I'm going to give the link directly to Twitch.
Yeah. I'm going to do that too, because I did a post.
Yeah. I'm going to do, I'm going to say we are now live. I'm going to just do a little bit of a quick little post here. Let's see. Go to my Stephen Burns. We are now live. I'm over here and duplicate this tab. There's always these little promo things I like to do right before we start. We're now live for 3D Photoshop with Daniel Grove.
Going back to all my old previous posts and commenting that.
Log in to. I'm going to put in join us here, and I'm going to go ahead and put the direct Twitch link there.
Yeah.
And then that way they can just come and jump right on in there.
There you go. Do the same thing.
Okay, cool. I'm also going to share this to the Photoshop group and other groups.
Oh yeah, I'm sure to my local group.
All right.
Local photography group.
Another person just jumped in. All right, so I'm gonna come over here. Just very quickly, Lightwave support group. I like the slideshow effect here.
On my homepage?
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't decide on one image to be on my homepage because I do so much different stuff. I was like, I just got to do a slideshow. Right. I'm not just a wedding photographer. I'm not just a family photographer. I do everything. So
I do everything.
It's good and bad. There's pros and cons to me being spread so thin. All right, doing a post to the San Antonio photography group. I'm doing for the Austin one too. That one's pretty big. A lot of good photographers in Austin.
I'm gonna go ahead and put the @ sign.
You know who has crazy photographers? Russia. My gosh.
Oh yeah, Russia's got some great artists.
Oh,
They got some great artists. There's Photoshop compositing. I'm also going to post it to Photoshop, and we'll post also the Photoshop company.
Hello, Mike Pix. How you doing? I can read your text.
Photomania, Adobe Photoshop, cool.
Steven, this will be recorded for later viewing, right?
Yes, it will be. Twitch automatically records once we start. Actually, it's already recording as we're speaking now.
Right. Yeah, I had a number of people that couldn't make it just because of work or shoots or whatever, so they said, "Oh, can I watch it later?" But you gotta go.
But Daddy, I'm getting Goldie in her cage.
She can be out. It's okay.
You'll watch her if she poops.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh! It's the kid creatures.
It's back. It found me.
They were supposed to be at the pool. You thought they were at the pool until
get out of here. I love that Scarlet Witch photo there. That was a really cool photo shoot. It was when WandaVision was still airing, and I had a friend that had the costume, and I was like, we got to do a photo shoot. And her sister was having her house built. And if you've seen WandaVision, the house foundation scene is like one of the big scenes of the show.
Right.
And the skeleton of the house. And so I said, hey, can we use your sister's house? It's not yet constructed. Like they just had the foundation and the beams barely put up. And we had permission. So we had the totally accurate shoot at a house that was not yet built. And it was a beautiful evening. It was so cool.
That's cool.
I love the practical effects. Didn't have the CGI a whole lot.
We got 6 minutes to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send it out to all the 5,000 members.
Oh boy.
As another little reminder, last minute reminder on the Photoshop users group. This is my personal mailing list. The Facebook page, I think, is up to 35,000, maybe more.
Wow.
We'll check real quick. All right, I'm going to copy that. And let's send this. I got to do a different name, of course. Send out a last, just like a 5-minute notice that we are live. We are now live.
Yes, MC Photos SA. I did just post it in the San Antonio photography group and the Austin group too. Had a lot of people interested in compositing, so hopefully they'll be able to jump on.
Okay, cool. Cool, very good. Okay, so hello. So now what I'm going to do is let's see, where am I? Let me go to StreamYard here. Let's see, where's my StreamYard? It's right in front of me, isn't it? What I can do is go to my comments. So I can post comments like this. If you're looking on Twitch, I can post people's comments. Can anyone hear me? No, Mike Pix, I guess. No one can hear you because you do not have microphone rights. And
yes, no one can hear you scream.
Yes, no one can hear you type.
We can read you type.
Only we can hear you scream.
On Twitch, no one can hear you scream.
All right. IB Wizard, that's David Good. Says hello. We've got, are you going to share this to the SA photo? Yeah, we're going to record. And we'll be sharing that at the Photoshop users group website. And I'll also give Daniel a link. Daniel will have a link as well. If I'm looking away from you guys on Twitch, it's because I'm looking at another monitor here, reading your questions. Okay, so Jack Jack Off Trads. Welcome.
Jack of trades.
Antonio Photography.
Yeah,
Matt
he's a friend of mine.
It's a friend of yours. Okay. So read my lips. Read my lips. No new taxes. Who was famous for that?
Read my lips.
Yes, I shared it in that group. Great. Okay, so we also have Mac Photo USA. All right. Do I just share? Yes, guys, share the Twitch URL. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the Twitch URL right into the chat box. And if you want to invite anybody from any of the groups, use this URL.
Yeah.
Use the Eventbrite. Eventbrite will send them an auto notification telling them where to link, but this is faster.
Yeah, it goes straight to it.
It'll go much faster. So Daniel Grove says you can share the Twitch link to Steven's account. Yeah, the account that you're at now is my personal Twitch account, Digital Creativity with Stephen Burns, aka Chromalusion. And I do weekly streams. We do a lot of Blender stuff as well as Photoshop presentations here. You guys are now at the Photoshop users group. We're an official Adobe sanctioned user group. Read my notice. It's the phrase spoken by an American presidential candidate. No, it was not. It wasn't.
Fact check.
If I got a fact check there, I thought that was Reagan. I thought that was Reagan that said that. Read my lips. No new taxes. Fact check that. I thought it was Reagan. I could be totally wrong. All right, we'll be getting started here in just a little bit.
Need some really bad elevator music while people wait.
Yeah. All right, we are now live with our presenter Daniel Grove, all the way from Texas.
It's a low 98, 99 degrees here.
I mean, where you are?
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm actually just guessing. Let me see. 96. Wow, that's very cold. Cold for this week. We had a lot of hundreds last month. There was too many 100 degrees. Oh, brutal and humid, which makes it like worse than dry heat.
All right, so I'm sending it now to the official user group database. We'll see if we get some numbers jump up here. Numbers are jumping already. Okay, let's go back to StreamYard. Let's see, maybe what I should do. Actually, I'm going to switch these two. I've got 3 monitors here in front of me, so.
Only.
There we go. I want this over here. All right, I'm going to do it this way. Okay, so we've got Mike says, read my little, okay, I already mentioned that one. I'm singing. Oh, gosh. Thank God.
I'm glad I can't hear you then.
Good thing we can't hear you. All right. I guess we'll be getting started. I guess we'll get started here in 1 minute. In 1 minute. You guys are here at the Photoshop users group. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce. I guess we'll go ahead and get started now, won't we? All right, let's see. Good morning, Essence. Good morning. Hey, good to see you. Another 3D guy. He's a light wave guy.
Ooh.
Okay, let's see. Good. Now numbers are jumping up. Good. Let me kind of take a look and see who's here. All right, let's say hello to some of the people here. We got Abjui, welcome. Apple Pie Cart, welcome. Avasamore. I mean, Mafori. Oh my gosh, I started that one. Welcome. We got
You.
Bludgedam Judge, I guess. Welcome. Chris Huff, welcome. Daniel Grove is here.
Hi.
DD Bell 23, IB Wizard, welcome. Lil Shark, welcome. Jack Off Trades, welcome. Mac Photo USA, welcome. Or Photosa.
Photo
Uh,
essay.
Photo
Yeah.
essay, is that what it is? Okay, got it. Mike Picks, welcome. It's more here, but they're not showing up here in the chat. Welcome everybody to the Photoshop Users Group, featuring Daniel Grove. Now, our last two meetings were actually actually in person. We were at the International Photography Exhibition here in San Diego, California. And it's one of the largest international photography exhibitions in the U.S. I'm one of the judges for that, of many judges. I think there's about 40 or 50 judges. I judge the digital art and compositing categories. And we had our meetings actually in person there, so we weren't really here on Twitch online. So, but now we're back online. We got international, access here. Everybody can come and join us. Now, just to kind of give you an idea of who we are an Adobe sanctioned user group. All right. So we're an official Adobe user group, Photoshop users group. And here, you guys should be seeing my page, is our Photoshop users group page. And let's see, how many people? David is here. David, how many members do we have in our group? It usually says right up here at the top, and I always have a tendency to miss. Is it 37,000 or is it 31, closer to 36? Faye is also one of our admins for the Photoshop user group. Thank you so much, Faye and David both. They're doing a great job. So we are pretty much an educational group. Basically, you want to come on, share your work. And let's see, IB Wizard has just posted the number. We have about 33,577, which is not really a lot. Seems like a lot, but it's not really a lot compared to some other groups. But it's a hefty group. We've got some really good artists in there. So everybody, please join in to the Photoshop users group. Just go in and like the page and become a member. Share your work, and then help other people to grow too. All right. So people have questions, and we'd love it if you answer questions, share your techniques, post your outstanding artwork that we have there. And I'm often putting in the banner group, right? Also, I'll find somebody's work that I think should be worthy of being placed in the banner, and I'll place it into the banner of the Photoshop users group. Here we got Faye. Faye, as I mentioned, is one of our admins. David Good is another admin. And kind of come in through here and kind of take a look at it on your own. Me personally, I'm also a digital artist. Behance.net/Stephen Burns. What I'll do is, let's do this. I'm going to copy and paste the link to the Facebook page for the Photoshop users group, and I'm going to put it into the Twitch chat box, so everybody is welcome to kind of go check it out. And I'm also going to put my personal Behance page, right? There we go. Oh, we got an error occurs. So let me post it this way. So I'm going to send here. Let's do it this way. There we go. So yeah, I think everybody should have that link. The Photoshop user group from Facebook should be on there. I don't know why it's giving me an error occurred, and wait a moment, and then we'll try again. Okay, no worries. I'm seeing it here on Twitch. That's all I care about. Welcome. The numbers are jumping here. Good. Everybody always has a tendency to come in a little bit late.
Artists, classic.
Yep, that's classic. So here is my site. I'm Stephen, and I gave the link to it. Go ahead and check this out. You can kind of take a look at some of the illustrations. Let's see. Let's go over here to some of the illustrations that I do, but involving 3D, right? So all of my books I've ever written, I've written about 8 of them. And they all include 3D and Photoshop in conjunction to tell a story, right? You guys can come here and take a look at this on your own. So I don't really want this to be about me. I want this to be about Daniel Grove, but you can go check it out. This is the last book that I wrote. Photoshop for 3D Photoshop for creative professionals, right? And you get to see in the book what you get to create. All right. So this book is totally out of date since Adobe is threatening to take away 3D functionality out of Photoshop. They have not yet taken 3D functionality out of Photoshop. It's still there. I personally believe they're going to change their mind on that because Blender has really taken the world by storm. And I believe that, killing the 3D features in Photoshop to interact with Blender is not particularly the way to go.
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see what's going to happen. Adobe will start some things and then decide, oh, we don't really want to go in that direction. But it's pretty much clear that Blender is making some incredible headways. I'm a Lightwave guy, just to kind of share a little bit more. And I'm going to start to share. I'm going to go share Daniel's screen now. And you're looking at Daniel's Blender screen. I'm a Lightwave guy, but I'm also a Blender instructor. So Blender is outstanding. It's not just popular because it's free, but it's literally revolutionizing 3D workflow and functionality. The Maya people are jumping over to Blender now. So if you have interest in 3D at all, get involved in Blender. Now, I do teach 5-week workshop classes. And since you sign up on Eventbrite, I'll let you know about those at another date. But I want to introduce you to Daniel Grove. Daniel and I hooked up online. Actually, he reached out to me because I was posting some jobs I was doing for clients, and they were 3D sci-fi model building stuff I was doing. And he reached out to me and says, "Are you a Blender guy?" And it's kind of like, well, I do both Photoshop and Blender. And then we connected in person. And I said, dude, you got to come in and share with the group, do a presentations. I really love what Daniel is doing. Okay, so without further ado, Daniel Grove, share more about yourself. Enjoy.
Sure. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you so much for this opportunity, by the way. This is a big honor and a lot of fun for me. I love teaching. I love helping, sharing what I know. And it makes me happy to, just kind of, hey, I learned this the hard way. Here's the shortcut. So I am a photographer in San Antonio, Texas, and I am a huge nerd. I have loved special effects since I could watch movies. Fifth Element and Independence Day and the like were movies when I was a kid that inspired me to ask, like, how is that made? It looks so real. How did they do it? And can I do it? With questionable versions of Max on Cinema 4D when I was in junior high, I kind of find out, it doesn't look like the movies, but I'm getting there. I could do this if I work at this. So I've always had a big love for special effects, and especially in compositing it with real things, putting real people into a fake world or vice versa. I love all that. And the element of fantasy and imagination has really driven me to improve myself and try to make my work look as real as possible. And it's like I said, Blender is taking the world by storm because it's free, but also because it's powerful and it is a good program. So it's been fun to kind of be a self-made VFX artist, and that I'm learning on my own and I'm able to improve myself. So anyway, I do all types of photography, as you saw my homepage slideshow there earlier. I do a lot of different types of photography work, but my favorite, of course, is when I get to bring my special effects work into it. I'm going to put this, my website right here. So this is just my page that has some of my composites that I've done. And I'll be going over how some of these were made, but we're going to focus on one specific composite that I'll show you guys. We'll actually build it from scratch. So I really enjoy being able to take a good photo and then make what would otherwise be an impossible photo, come to life. I don't have this set piece. I don't have movie sets. I can't find locations. Sometimes I can't find locations that match the character. So I'm able to make stuff that just tickles my fancy and looks cool. That's really the end goal. And people like it and they pay me for it. So I've made a good name for myself in San Antonio and really in Central Texas. Oops, that link didn't work. Because I'm one of the few people that do composites like this. and I like that. So yeah, I go to Comic-Cons here in town. I do photographs of cosplayers, and I also do shoots throughout the year of people, and make them look awesome.
And I have to ask you, you
Mhm.
mentioned you do Comic Cons. Have you ever been to the San Diego Comic Con?
I haven't been to the big boy ones yet. No,
And
we've got some decent
that's
ones
like,
here in town, but I
that's
haven't
like
traveled yet.
you haven't been to Comic Con until you come to San Diego Comic Con.
Yeah, or Dragon Con, or what are the other big ones in
Yeah.
Atlanta that's one. But yeah, we used to have two really big ones here in San Antonio. One of them was PAX South, the gaming convention, but they pulled out of San Antonio. So now the really only big one that at least I go to is San Japan. And that's coming up in September. So I'll be shooting, I think I have like 24 or 25 cosplayers booked back to back, and I'll be having a lot of fun with them. And some of them have paid for composites, so I'll be doing some composite work for a few of them, and having a lot of fun with those. Let me see if I'm skipping on anything here. Oops, sorry. Got a lot of things open on my two screens right now. So I'm going to go over briefly the different tools that I use, physical and software wise, to make my stuff come to life. I'm of course using Photoshop and Blender. Those are my two workhorses as far as software. I do use Lightroom Classic for my general photography adjustments. Like the first step is Lightroom. I do about 80% of my edit there, and then I'm done with Lightroom and I move on to Photoshop if I need it. In this case, of course, there's a lot of Photoshopping with this type of work, but not all my photography is ridiculously Photoshopped. I do normal pictures too, and those are just short and sweet and Lightroom, and I'm done. Yeah, so I use Blender for all my 3D environments. I use it to make props sometimes. I use it to make VFX elements that I may layer on top in Photoshop. It's just such a universal program. I found really interesting ways to use it. I've done motion graphics in it before. I've done text animation. There's so many things you can do with it if you're just creative and think outside the box. This is a good example right here where I real quickly made the city side of this building facade and plopped Spider-Man onto it. He was on the ground. And I didn't spend a lot of time on this because I actually wasn't paid for this one. I just had the idea. I said, you know what? I already got Spider-Man squatting on the ground. How hard could it be to make the side of a skyscraper and just put it under him? So that was a quick and dirty one, but it came out pretty cool. And I'm a Canon guy, so right now my camera that I'm using, my webcam, is actually the mirrorless Canon R6 with a 16-35 lens on it. And I love using flash and lighting to provide practical effects when I can, such as this guy. This photo was a real mind bender. It seems simple when I explain it, but my brain was wrapping around how to shoot this to get him underwater. He was standing on the ground. I was up on a little landscaped island of flowers looking down on him. And I was almost there mentally, but I was like, you know what? I think in post I can figure this out. I'm shooting down and I want him to be swimming downwards away from the surface of the water. There was a lot going on, but it came out good. And I used a blue flash gel on his right, on our left, to give that blue, color cast from the ocean. To the right is just natural sunlight hitting him. And it worked out because the sunlight from the surface of the ocean was up there, blue was below him. And yeah, practical effects to me really help me be a better compositor, because I can bring in real colors, color cast, glows, the color of fire, whatever lightsaber colors that I would be photoshopping to enhance what I shot is already there in a real way. So I use a lot of color gels and color effects like that. And of course, just general flash just really makes my photos pop. I'm almost always using flash when I shoot cosplayers to give a styled look, to make them pop, to separate them from the background, and just to make it look, better. I don't use flash when I'm doing stuff like this, like a natural kind of fantasy look. I don't want it to look like a superhero comic book. It's just supposed to look more natural. So I shoot natural light when I need to. But if I need to make something stand out and look awesome and different, then I totally can, because I know how to use flash, and it's been a really great tool to utilize and bring style to my photos. As far as Blender, I do use a few resources and add-ons. Today, I will only really be covering one specific add-on that's paid. It's called Perspective Plotter. Blender is really cool because the add-ons and the plugins that you can get online are just so dirt cheap. Like on average, they're about $10 to $20 per plugin. And I haven't searched other, 3D platforms and what their add-ons cost, but I'm pretty sure they're not that cheap. And they're made by really skilled and talented programmers that know what they're doing, and they're making a specific tool that Blender may not support yet. But
I know with Maya and Lightweight plugins are like a minimum of $200 a piece.
Right. Yeah. So the open source community and this open source mindset is that, hey, like this shouldn't cost you an arm and a leg. It's just a small specific code and plugin that does one thing, and you can get it for cheap. So very affordable. I feel that Blender's add-ons are very affordable. But yeah, Perspective Plotter I use. It just came out, I think, less than a few months ago, and I use it to grab the perspective of my real photo and bring that into Blender and just set up my scene, set up the camera with the accurate angle and focal length and everything so when I build my 3D world, it matches the photo. And it's just amazing. That was one of the biggest headaches of doing this type of work, was matching your real camera in perspective. And there was a lot of guesswork. There was a lot of weird little tricks that I learned over time to get close, but Perspective Plotter gets me as close as probably possible without spending, more than 10 minutes on it, which is great. So, yeah, Perspective Plotter I'll be covering. There's a few other resources I really enjoy, such as Sketchfab.com. Sketchfab.com is a ginormous library of 3D scans and 3D models. And it's great. There's a lot of good free stuff on there, and there's some really excellent paid stuff as well if you need to purchase something for a job. But I have had so much fun and not spent a cent on Sketchfab over a few years. I've been using it maybe 1 or 2 years, and just downloading, what are they? Creative Commons and CC0 assets that you can use and stuff. So there's a lot on there that can help you speed up your job. You want to build an industrial hallway or a fantasy world, you can find a tree pack here. You can find some grass elements here. You can find some hillsides or a mountain scan for the background. Just slap it all together in Blender, and you've jump-started the creation of an environment. And I have a very active YouTube channel. If you don't really know Blender, I'm not going to be teaching you how to use Blender necessarily in this video today, but I'll be covering some specific techniques that I use in Blender to build environments. So if you're completely new to Blender, don't worry, you can learn it. There's tons of free resources online. My YouTube channel is one of the best, of course. If you YouTube search Daniel Grove Photo, you'll find me, and I've got a lot of videos that are aimed at new users and novice users on how to use Blender. So just want to put that out there up front. Yeah, Sketchfab is awesome. There's some other websites such as CC0. What is it? Now I'm forgetting. Polyhaven.com, I think it is, that they have a ton of PBR textures, which are multi-image maps that you can bring into Blender and use as realistic looking textures for all kinds of stuff. So yeah, there's lots of good texture websites out there that are free, and you don't have to pay a license or anything to use this stuff. So that's another great asset that I use or resource that I use to get stuff.
And ambientcg.com. I'm going to post these into the chat box inside of Twitch.
AmbientCG.com is great. And there's about 3 or 4 others, but I think AmbientCG is the most well-populated website as far as textures. And I've made my own library on my hard drive of that stuff. And
textures.com is another.
Yeah. Yeah, I think textures.com is good for just image, like straight up photos, like a photo of the side of a skyscraper or a dirt floor. They're not, I don't think they're PBR. They probably have some PBR, but just tons of resources on there you can use to text your stuff and make it look photorealistic. Okay, so as a little early disclaimer, I want to cover the fact that I'm using a 3D program for Photoshop. A lot of photographers, like I said, do compositing, but they don't use Blender yet. Yeah, I want to say yet, because hopefully one day they will. So I wanted to talk about a few pros to using Blender for this type of work, because traditionally photography compositing was just done with stock photos. You find a sky, you find a mountain range, and you find a grassy plain, then you find some things to put in the foreground. You kind of build it from image planes, from image layers that are flat, 2-dimensional stock photos. And there's nothing wrong with that. I still do that occasionally when the job calls for it, and when I don't have the time to model something in Blender, or if a photo is just a better route. But there's a few cons to that, namely the perspective and the lighting. Those are the biggest things that make a photo look great. And when you can't control perspective and lighting in a lot of situations, Sometimes composites kind of flop and they don't get past that uncanny valley of something's not quite right here, or obviously this is just a bunch of stock photos thrown together and a person in the middle. You don't want that to be the summary for your photo. So using Blender, I'm able to get any camera angle I want, whether it's a wide angle with distortion or a tight zoomed in shot. I can of course change any lighting I want. I can add colored lighting. I can add depth of field and blur. There's just so much control you have when you're basically making an entire universe around your two-dimensional person that you've actually photographed. So I love that control. That control you don't have over stock photos. You can warp it, you can do dodge and burn, and you can add fake lighting, but just not quite the same. So I love being able to make custom backgrounds, whether they're photorealistic or they're stylized. I have done plenty of stylized stuff in Blender as well, which is actually a lot easier because you're not so worried about the details and the stuff that photoreal things require. Custom angles and lenses, custom lighting, and maybe best of all, no copyright issues because you've made it yourself. If you're using 3D scans and other things that people have made, sometimes there is an attribution needed, or you need to list their name or link back to the original link. Sometimes you have that, but if you're making stuff from scratch, like there's no copyright. There's no lawsuit coming in 10 years when the maker finds you, that you stole their image off Google Images or whatever. So that's nice. I sleep a little better at night when I know that my backgrounds are all me. Okay, so I wanted to move on and let's show you guys a few scenes that I've made in Blender, Blender Photoshop together. And I will be first starting, once we get past this point, I will be starting with the Blender making the scene, and then we'll render that and move on to Photoshopping and making the rest of it come together. So I've got just 5 scenes that I've done here. This very first one is the one that we'll be making today. So this is a Cyberpunk 2077 cosplayer group that I photographed at PAX South in 2018 or 2017. And they were just phenomenal. This is before the game even came out. And so they were just looking at fan art and promotional stuff online. And they made these costumes from just random stuff. And they did a really good job. And it was fun because it was such a big group. I don't normally shoot very big groups like these because my shoots at Comic-Cons are very quick. They're 20 minutes each. So large groups don't often work. But these guys were awesome and on point. And I just love shooting people that look great. And I like when they bring their A game, I bring my A game, and it makes it a double A game. I don't know how that works. But stuff looks great when both parties do their part. And I shot them. Let me show you the original photo. Right there. Not a bad original photo. Like, that's pretty cool. Maybe erase this annoying arrow right here pointing at his head. But it's a good photo. One thing I love about it is that check out these sweet lines on the ground. These lines I love because this helps me track my perspective. And this vertical line on the wall behind them, you can see it slanting backwards a little bit because I was shooting really low at like 21 millimeter with a wide angle lens. And those lines are golden for someone like me to replace the background. I love lines. A lot of people say, oh, what green screen do you use? Or, where do you put your green screen? I have never shot in front of a green screen. I hate green screen because 2 reasons. Chroma key, for some reason in Hollywood, they do an amazing job with green screen video. Avengers, chroma key, blue and green, they've got Houdini and stuff going, a team of 20 people probably doing that. So they do a great job. But in Photoshop, chroma key does work. I just don't like it. It's just a pain. There's so much cleanup required afterwards. It's almost not worth it for me. So I don't shoot in front of a green screen. And in fact, I do like shooting my composite people on location because I get the sense of where the horizon line is. If I have buildings and structures, even better. Now I know where the perspective is. And that helps me work with that later. So yeah, I don't I like shooting cosplayers on location. I don't shoot studio like almost ever, not with cosplay at least. So this finished image, I built the city behind them in Blender, of course. These buildings are from a few different Kitbash 3D sets. There's Kitbash 3D company. They make incredible quality, mostly building sets, and they've got different styles. Like there's a Victorian era building kit. They've got steampunk. Now there's a diesel punk. You've got Tokyo, just normal American city, all different styles you can imagine, even like ancient and Chinese stuff. Really cool. And so I think I'm combining 2 different styles here. There's a Tokyo, there's a cyberpunk kit, like 2 of the buildings are from cyberpunk, and then there's like a normal, just modern day American buildings. And they're all smashed together. I made some cars in the background. We'll show you those in a minute. They look way cooler here than they do in person. They do not look very cool in person. You'll see. You'll see that shortly. And I just did a bunch of flying cars. You know, the depth of field background blur does a lot for lazy modeling because you can't really see. It's blurred. You say with motion blur, and you can cover stuff up. So that's what's going on. That's the background sky is just a stock photo of a cloudy sky. So I do use stock photos sometimes, especially for skies and clouds. And lots of glowing signs. I found a bunch of like Japanese signs and stock photos of really colorful stuff, and I turn those into hologram shaders in Blender using the emissions shader so that they glow. They actually do emit real light, and they'll light up things that are around them. So got some realisticness there. So next scene, I'll spend a little bit less time on these other ones, but yeah. So this was a fun shoot I did for a family. The mom, Stephanie, and Brandon, the dad, they have a company together called Pineapple House Platforms, and they plan all these really cool, elaborate events and styled shoots for photographers like me that like to do creative stuff and be different, you know? So she said, hey, I want to do like a family circus. I was like, oh, I already just, right when she said that, it just clicked. My head went right to The Greatest Showman. And I was thinking of like an old classy ring, you know, a performing ring. And I watched a documentary of behind the scenes of that movie, and they were working on a sandy filled ring like this. And so I was watching the documentary, modeling it on my other screen in Blender, and it basically just built this whole tent. It's a ginormous tent with all kinds of stuff you can't even see. And yeah, put them into it. I shot them individually, which I don't normally do, which is really tricky because I had to keep the same camera height and same angle. Essentially, just use a tripod if you're doing that. And then I've cut them together and all that. Yeah, so that was fun. This one is of me. I had access to a really good Jedi costume for a Comic-Con I went to, and I said, you know what? I'm getting a photo shoot done of me in this costume. So I had my friend photograph me in her home studio, and I built this whole, see if I can go to the next picture here. I built this Jedi temple in Blender, which I was really proud of. I feel like it came out pretty photorealistic. The stone texture, I worked a long time on to get it to where there was no repeating tiles. It was always random. There's a lot of variation, and it just looks like a sandy ancient stone. And I built that whole thing for that little tiny photo. And I was really happy how it came out. This is the original, just that. That's the render from Blender. And then me on top with, you know, some light rays and me. And also this lightsaber staff was fake. I think I was holding a wooden dowel rod, which I bought from Home Depot, and I cut to the exact length of a lightsaber from bottom of the hilt to the tip of the blade. But I've always liked saber staffs, so I made myself a double-sided saber staff, which Ray should have had in Star Wars, but didn't.
In Blender?
Yeah, I made that lightsaber in Blender. Let's see if I have the 3D file for that. Oh, I don't. It's on another hard drive. Here's another one of me that I did from that same photo shoot. With the saber actually ignited, but I built this modular Death Star interior, or general just Star Destroyer Empire interior styled building set, and I was really happy with it. And the cool thing is that it's completely modular. Each of these panels are its own little chunk. The floor are chunks, the doors are chunks. You can just Lego, assemble your own room, and it was a lot of fun to play with. So I used that to build my environment, and I was really happy with it. The floor reflections are really hard. You can't just copy an image and flip it upside down unless your camera angle is straight to the person. If you're looking down or up, forget about it. It's not going to be right. So I made this really creepy looking shadowy figure in Blender that it was posable. And I just posed him roughly to what I was doing. So there was at least some kind of reflection. And it was looked like a scary nightmare person in my Blender scene. But it did the trick, and it gives you the brain knows, oh yeah, reflection. Even though it's not like a lit up reflection, I think it looks pretty good. And of course, I love lightsabers because they emit a crap ton of light, and I like to use that in my scenes. And those are explosion. Those are images. The explosion images. I think there's 2 layered ones that I used on top of each other, and then I put a bunch of debris, Photoshop brush that randomly scatters debris pieces on top of the fire, gives some motion. And there is a mouse droid in here somewhere. Where is it? There it is. Mouse droid is getting blown to pieces. Ah! I just had to add that in there. There's another one over here. Oh no, there's just one. He's getting it. And then the last one here, I'll show you guys. I also shot this at PAX South. I think it was the same year I did the Cyberpunk group, and this was a ton of fun. These guys' costumes were just almost movie quality. They're so good. This is like legit chainmail, real leather, everything, really cool. And so I said, I wasn't familiar with them at the time because the show hadn't come out. And I was like, what are their powers? What's the coolest thing that they can do visually? And he's like, well, Geralt can shoot fire out of his hands, and she does like lightning sometimes. So I looked up a bunch of reference images and kind of had my own take on that, and made it happen. My goal with VFX when I'm doing cosplayers is to imagine what would it look like if Weta Digital made a movie about this anime character or this comic book character. How would they bring a stylized, usually when it deals with anime is when it's really hard, because anime looks cool when you watch it. But if you pause it and think, wait a second, like if this is brought into real world, it would look totally different. Like the lighting, the detail, everything is very different when you go from anime to real life. And so that conversion process is what my brain is trying to do. Like, what would this look like if it was not only in the real world, but also if it was done by a high budget digital VFX company. And I'm not saying I'm on par with Weta Digital, but I thought it looks pretty sweet. So that's kind of what my mindset is. How would I bring this into the real world? And then, of course, the nitty gritty is how do I do this in Photoshop or Blender? So those are stock photos. These lightning bolts are, I found a bunch of free stock photos of lightning, and I turned them into brushes. So I have a whole 20 brush set of just lightning strikes. And I went to town on that. There's probably 40 layers right there. And I added some other weird magic-y stuff going on. And this one too. I built this wall right here is real, the stone wall, but this archway was not. This is just a flat wall behind him, and I put a flash behind him with a blue gel, so you can see a little bit of blue, and most importantly, his shadow is being cast towards us, and some blue glow on the ground. And I made that little archway real quick in Blender. Not my best work, but it's cool to look at real quick. Again, he didn't pay for that, so I just did it quick and dirty. So I've been talking a lot. Let me drink some water. If you guys have any questions, please ask in the chat. I would love to interact with you guys when I can, kind of when I'm in between stuff. I do my best to answer any questions y'all have and address those. But Steven, I think I'm ready to move on to the Blender side. Anything you want to talk about?
Yeah, go for it. No, nothing. Go. It's all yours.
Okay.
Just to give you FYI, we'll stop at 11:30 for about a 15-minute break.
Okay.
And then we'll continue on.
And your 11:30 is my 1:30?
It's about 1 hour exactly from now.
Yeah. Okay. Because you're in Pacific, I'm in Central. So we're 2 hours. I'm 2 hours behind you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Time traveling. Okay. So this is the practice scene that I made this morning with the building assets that I have already had. So this is not the original background that you saw earlier on the Cyberpunk group photo. But using Blender's asset browser, which is kind of newer feature where you can just drag and drop stuff from your library of assets, whether they be models or textures and materials. You can just drop them into your scene. It's really easy for building stuff. When you already got building assets like these, just drag and drop. And I really like building scenes like that. And I'm still working on building up my library of different styles assets for buildings, for fantasy stuff, for sci-fi rooms, so I can just build stuff real quick. So this is what we'll be building. And let's start with the new Blender file. So I'm using a certain version of Blender. It's called K-Cycles-X. It's still Blender. All the code is still there. But this really smart guy, I forgot his name, who made it, has basically recoded some of the GPU type stuff where it renders a little bit faster, which means I can increase my samples and get just higher quality renders for either the same amount of time or sometimes less. So all of that.
Okay, everything, is this a beta?
K-Cycles-X?
Right. Is you said it was? Is this built into a beta version of Blender, or is
no? It's a separate version of Blender. So because Blender is open source, everyone has access to the code.
Right.
And so this guy has made his own version called K-Cycles-X. It's like $30 or something like that. And it's really just renders a little bit faster. There's a few additional things, like he had the lens flares and some other little, little eye candy stuff, but it's still Blender. So everything I'm showing you guys will work 100% in normal Blender. And I'm using the 3.2 version. I think 3.3 just came out, but I like to hold back a little bit on the version upgrades for obvious reasons. I'm a Windows guy. I know you don't upgrade instantly. Bad idea. So new file, and I'm going to open up my asset browser from the top, and you'll see a little library I made of assets here. Kit bash. Here we go. So over on the left, I've got my different, I think they're called catalogs. So I've got these are the ones I'll be using right here. These are all the cyberpunk and somewhat modern day buildings. I've also got some signs. I wish I could zoom in, but currently you can't zoom in yet. Oh, wait.
So it's the asset library, right?
There we go. Yes, this is technically asset browser. There's definitely some weak points of the asset browser. Blender has a little bit of work to do. It's a little bit clunky in some regards, but it does the trick. If you set it up right, it's plug and play. I've also got a separate little catalog here for my futuristic cars, which do have materials, but it's not showing them because the aforementioned problems of the asset browser. Still has some work to be done. And I've got another one over here with a bunch of greeble type like crates and props. They're really dark. Sorry if you can't see them very well. These are the light stands we'll be using, or the street lights. Sorry. And I've got a bunch of other cool stuff. I got these for free on Gumroad. A bunch of really awesome cables. One of my friends, Danny Burns, the other Burns, he made a Tatooine set with some really beautiful buildings. So yeah, it's just fun to drag and drop the stuff and build scenes really quickly. So I'm going to start with making my ground plane in Blender. So I'm just going to make a plane here. I'm going to size it up super big. So S, and I'll just do 50, enter. So scale it 50. And then I'm going to drop, I have a street plane that it's going to be the central road down our cyberpunk city. And it's right here. It's really long. So I'm just going to drop it right there. There it is. Awesome. Zoom out. I'm going to make my ground planes a little bit bigger, maybe times 10. And because these planes are technically intersecting each other, we get some weirdness here. So I'm just going to grab my road. Oops. And press GZ to move it up on the Z. And just hold shift right there. If you hold shift while moving things, they move in like 10 times smaller increments. So it's really good for fine adjustments. This already has a nice PBR texture applied to it. So you can see the good shines or, like a wet street. This does tile, which I don't like tiling textures, but in our scene, you won't be able to tell. It's so close down to the ground. You can't see the whole road. So there's that. So now the fun part, we get to start drag and dropping buildings and building our cyberpunk city. So the back of my scene is one really tall building that has a tall glowing light on it. I'll show it to you.
And I missed this question, Daniel.
Mm-hmm.
It's from No Shark. It says, how did you do the fire from the hand? Was it a brush and too?
That was a stock photo of a fire breather from like a circus or something. So, yeah. That and my stock photos, there's a bunch of websites for that as well that are legal and free to use. The big one is Pixabay, PIXABAY.com. Then there's unsplash.com, PXhere.com. There's about 5 of them that just have really good libraries of photos, and they're good for compositing and little elements like that. You can simulate fire in Blender, but I don't want to for obvious reasons. Set my computer on fire is what'll happen. So this building right here is a central, and thank you, Stephen. Please butt in and tell me any questions because I may not see them. So sure. Thank you for letting me know that. This big building is like the central point at the end of the street, and then there'll be buildings all along the way of different heights and a bunch of signs, of course, to add some color and break up the patterns. So I need to find that building with the light down the middle. I think it's this one. Yeah, that's it. Cool. So I'm going to press 7 for above view, which gets a flat above view, and I'm going to put this right in the back center right there. Make sure it's lined up in the middle. I'm using my mouse wheel to zoom in and out really fast. It's very handy. There we go. You got to start with an anchor, right? This is my anchor for my scene. It's at the back. It's in the middle. Everything else is going to come out towards the camera, which will be somewhere over here at the start of the road on the left. So now I'm just going to drag and drop buildings randomly, and then I'll clean it up later. I'll probably get a view like this will be easiest. This building I know is one of the very detailed ones, so I want it to be up close to the camera. And then there's another one right here that's very detailed as well that I want to be on the other side, close to the camera. There you go. Okay. Then just plopping stuff around, and then we will arrange them more creatively and make sure that they all fit within the camera. The camera cone is what I call it. I don't know what it's really called when the camera, the view, field of view. I don't know. It looks like a cone in Blender. I'll show you. So drag and drop, drag and drop. Already used that one. Tower. Some are big, some are small. It's important when you're doing architecture to make sure your scales are all the same. When I set these up, I believe the scales are all uniform. Oops, I got a duplicate of my big building there. Delete that. Anybody else, a 90s kid, grew up playing Sim Tower or Sim City?
Right.
I love those games.
What was the name? I'm sorry, I meant to post the link for the free images.
Oh yeah, I've got it here. 1 second. I have them saved in my favorites. Textures. Oh, free. Here goes. Photo. So there's Pexels, P-E-X, not pixels, but Pexels. P-E-X-E-L-S.com.
Okay, P-E-X
E-L-S.
E-L-S.
Mm-hmm.
.com.
Yep. Let me pull it up on the screen so you can actually see it. It's on my favorites right here. Photo there. So Pexels, and then there's unsplash.com. That one's good.
All right, I'm going there. So unsplash.com. That one, www.unsplash. I'm gonna go ahead and I just posted one.
Yeah.
www.unsplash.com. Got it. All right, thank you.
Pixabay is one I use a lot too. And some of these do require attribution. So, you know, if you want to go by the books and be fair to the artists who made the photos, they offer them for free, which is awesome. But some of them require you to post the attribution of where it came from when you post publicly. So just a disclaimer there. That's how copyright works. Clean PNG is a really cool one. I have found some really great transparent backgrounds on this one. Not transparent assets, where there's like the backgrounds look very well cut out. See? Some of it's stylized cartoon stuff, but then there's some like photorealistic trees and like this. This is gold right here. I could use. I think I have used this one before. I needed a good tree line, and that saved my day. Let's try the magic. You got some cool VFX elements. Maybe. Oh yeah, some cool swooshes, holograms, magic mirror, some particles, cool stuff. Cleanpng.com. I like it.
Huh.
Okay, so I've got my stuff set. I'm going to create my digital camera by pressing Shift A and create a camera. And it's right here. It's by default, cameras are usually facing at a 45. So I'm going to press Alt R, which resets your rotation to the zeros, like 0, 0, 0, X, Y, and Z. And then I'm going to rotate it up like that. I'm just doing this. This is not going to be the officially tracked camera, but I know it's going to be around 20 millimeters when it is done. And see that cone? Let me get the asset browser up there. I do that a lot. Now that we got this cone, we can kind of see roughly where the field of view is going to be. So I want to make sure stuff fits within that. And when I do my camera, like my, what is it called? Plotter, perspective plotter, we'll really know what's going to be in view. But I like to spread things out and make sure that there's not a tall building cover up a bunch of small buildings. But I also don't want it to be like small building to tall building, you know, like I want it to be kind of spread around randomly. So the y-axis, which is green, see that green line? Y is along my street. That's going to be really important later when I do my perspective plotter, because I need to know that y is away from the camera and x is lateral, this way, left and right. And of course, blue is z is upwards. So yeah, so let's get some buildings kind of set around. Oh, that's wrong camera. I'm going to select this one and make it the active camera. There we go. So these are the really nicely detailed buildings that I want to be right around the front of the view, because there's a lot of like little details over here that are nice, and also will give a good illusion of scale. And I did some modifying to this one to give it some really cool lighting. Let me go to the real-time rendered view, and it should glow pretty nicely. Yeah. I also added some underlighting, so we have some like nice little outside storefront lighting. And I used a gradient map in Blender's nodes to make it fade from purple to blue. So some of the light is blue, some of it's purple. It gives a nice variety of lighting. And I added a few, I think I added it to this one too. I added same outside lighting there to give some consistency. Cyberpunk is all about pink and sky blue. So there's going to be a lot of that. A lot of color. So let's move these up close to the camera. Like that. And then we'll have some buildings along the street, because that's how buildings work. They're along the street, and there's other ones in between and behind them. As far as the height goes, I'm probably going to go to a different view. There we go. I'm going to have to rearrange these because the height, like this one I know is probably pretty small. I still want it to be seen, but maybe put it, sticking out a little bit so it's still visible. And a lot of these buildings won't be seen. That's okay. Can't get everything in the shot. And if you do, it'll just be probably a crowded, noisy shot, which is not great sometimes. But I definitely want some shooting up. So there seems to be a huge gap between this building and this building. Visually, there's a large space that's not being filled. So I want to find an interesting building to put there. This one's really cool. A lot of details. It might be too big, but honestly, I can't really tell. Like, those are windows, obviously. But down here, it's kind of vague. So I could shrink this down. Sorry, let me go to individual origins. I can shrink this whole building down, and so I can get more detail in the shot without ruining the scale illusion that I talked about earlier. Where is it? There it is. This one is just towering over everything, so I'm going to put it in the back. It's a very tall building. Way back there. The shorter one's more up front. Just check that out. Cool. I'm going to split my screen so I can see the camera view. And then I'm going to have like an above God view over here so I can really arrange things better. So where's the boring parts of my scene? This building looks super boring. So I'm just going to move that out of the way for now because it's just so blocky. There's no shape. Not a lot going on. This one's really cool. Very interesting architectural building. And I want something short kind of popping out in that little gap right there. Cool. How's this? Maybe that one popping in right there. This one is a cool building and I can't see it. Maybe we can put it up in this gap. Whoop. Nice fire escape on the side there. But you don't want to cover up too much of the scene, so I'm going to move it back a little bit like that because the view, yeah, oh, that's still sticking out too far. There we go, like that. Cool. Great. Okay. All right. So let's pretend we're happy with that. Oh, I need to give a material to my ground. So I'll show you how I do that real quick. My first plane I made right here. I'm going to split my screen again, use the shader editor, which is where you build all your textures and materials. And currently, let me go to material mode. This will take it loaded really fast. I guess all my image textures were already in my RAM from earlier. So that was fast. Sometimes that takes a minute. So let's make a new material, call it ground. And actually, I'm going to do you one better and just use the asset browser because I found a nice concrete one I had used earlier in my practice. I'm just going to go to all and search concrete. It was this one. Drag and drop and boom. The scale is all wrong, but that's easy to fix. Shader editor. Go to your X and Y scale of the UVs for the image. Let's try putting them both at maybe 10. 3. It's hard to say until my camera's really down here. 5. Something like that. And also this road keeps disappearing and it's not totally realistic. There should be a bit of a curb to it. So I'm going to add a curb. This is really just one polygon, or sorry, one face. 4 vertices making a rectangle. It's very simple. So even though it's very large. So I'm going to not cover up everything. Go to edge mode, grab these two edges, E to extrude, Z to extrude them upwards. So I'm making like a little wall. This is the curb edge. Get down really low here. There we go. And then E, enter again, and I'm going to scale these two edges outwards from each other. Like that. Nice. A little sidewalk. Cool. Then I'm going to grab this edge and this edge, and I'm going to bevel them ever so slightly. Add some extra. There you go. Cool. This is called hard surface modeling, which is my favorite type of modeling because it's great for lazy people like me. I do not do organic character designs. I don't do creatures. I don't do sculpting. I just don't have time for it. And I like doing hard surface stuff like this. So I'm going to give this a different texture. 1 second.
Yeah, very cool.
Okay, so make another material. Oh, my camera's in the way of my button. I can't move my camera. There we go. New material, name it sidewalk. And let's go back to the asset browser and find something that's got some panels, like some metal stuff going on. Sci-fi, my favorite category. Got tons of stuff in here. Military hull. Little over the top for sidewalk. It's thinking. Okay, the UV wraps are all screwed up, so let's just unwrap it. There we go. And the scale is wrong because this is a ginormously long rectangle. So this is the ultimate lazy UV unwrapping right here. There you go. So from a ground level, it'll look like a kind of a techno platey ground thing going on. And it's kind of green, which I don't like that. So I'm going to desaturate that image texture that's being used for the color data by using a hue saturation, which you Photoshoppers will recognize. I'm just going to turn my saturation down to like 0.3 or something. So it's more gray. There we go. Okay. Nodes, by the way, are such an amazing feature in Blender. It's not a Blender thing. They're also in Houdini and other programs too, but nodes are basically a chain of signal, just like soundboards and video equipment. It goes from an output to an input, and you can control all kinds of stuff and make things with textures as well as geometry now with geometry nodes. Really powerful new feature of Blender that I've barely touched, and but the textures I'm pretty well versed with. I've got a lot of tutorials on my YouTube for how to do material nodes and procedural stuff too, which I love procedural. It's all computer calculated with no images needed. So with all of this basically done, let's bring in our actual image and do the perspective plotter. So you have to be in your camera view, which is numpad 0. I'm trying to select my camera here. Come on, camera. Oh, I hit it somehow. There we go. So our camera right now is this guy. Press 0, goes into your camera view. And we're going to bring up our side panels to get access to P plotter, perspective plotter. So before we do this, well, you don't have to, but you should, is I'm going to bring in my image as it's called background image, but technically it's going to be in the foreground. The background image feature of your camera in Blender is really handy for reference images. Let's say you're modeling from a car blueprint and you have a flat actual blueprint image. It's like flat and two-dimensional. You can put that behind your scene and just build on top of it. And then you could, if you have the other perspectives of that reference image of that blueprint, you can put those into your different views. You can have an above background view, you can have a side one and a front, and you can model based on that and have everything accurate to scale, which is really handy. So in your camera settings, open up background images and check it, add image, open, and I'm going to open my Cyberpunk photo, which I've already removed the background from in Photoshop. I've removed that ahead of time to make that a lot easier, but I will show you guys how I remove backgrounds in Photoshop when I get to that point. So this is the PNG of the people with no background. So open. And I'm going to choose front. So instead of back, right now it's behind all my 3D scene, but I want it to be on front and full opacity. There we go. It's a little stretched. So perspective plotter knows that, which is really cool. That's why this button is turned red. So if I click it, it fixes my render my render resolution, because by default, renders in Blender are usually 1920 by 1080, just normal HD video, but cameras don't shoot in that. Cameras shoot in a 2:3 aspect ratio. So that's what it just changed to, was a 2:3. I could change this back later by just cropping, but they just fixed everything so that there's no stretching. And yeah, so we have our people here. Now this doesn't look half bad, but it's not as good as it could be. So let's use Perspective Plotter to make it perfect. So I'm going to click on Perspective Plotter. Oh, and by the way, this add-on is like $15. Best $15 I've ever spent. And I love it. So like I said earlier, remember I said to remember the colors of your axes. So Y going away from camera is green, and blue is Z. Oh, sorry, Z up and down is blue. So we're going to set our 2 vanishing points. Over here on the right, there's vanishing point 1 and vanishing point 2. So it doesn't matter which one's which, but one needs to be Z and one needs to be Y. Okay, now this is not automatic. Actually, I think I need to flip-flop them. Oh no, it'll flip-flop when it knows what I'm doing. So, and I did something wrong. I need to use the image with the lines, the actual untouched image. So I'm going to just replace that with this one. That's why I was saying how much I love these lines, because they help me. So let's use those. So green is going away. So green lines need to start at the brick on the ground and go away from me. Bloop, bloop. And the other side, receding into infinity, like so. And then blue is up and down. And if I get these backwards, my camera will be upside down. You can barely see them. I'm sorry, they're very faint. Put that one here, and eventually it'll snap. Oh yeah, I can see my background. Everything's upside down. So I need to grab my blue markers and just like 180 them. So this one needs to come down over here, do a little flip flop. And then this one over here. It's still upside down. Maybe they just need to be replaced from left to right. Let's see if it happens. Come on. Oh, it's still upside down. This is embarrassing. Maybe it's my green ones. Oh, I maybe can flip Z. Oh, I was on negative Z, not positive Z. Geez, that's why it was upside down. So right now the perspective is correct, but the camera is underneath the ground. It's down underground, right? So let's just, with the camera selected, GZ to move it straight up. That doesn't affect the perspective. It just moves it up and down. So we are done. Let me just double check on the lines, make sure I'm happy with them. Zoom in real close. Now you can probably see them better. So green, this is Y. I've been brainstorming how to efficiently photograph cosplayers in a studio setting while still having perspective lines. I've been thinking of like having some kind of ping pong balls hanging from strings that are the same height, just kind of on the sides of the scene, or like painting a black and white grid wall and then a wall behind them so that I can track stuff really easily. I don't know, brainstorming that. If I ever do like a Comic-Con photo booth, I think that would be pretty cool to have. Composite photo booth. Don't know if they can afford me. Cosplayers are notoriously poor because why? They spend all their money on their costume and the tickets. And then the photographer comes along and they're like, oh, I don't have any money left. I'm sorry. All right, that is way more accurate than it was before. And let's see what it's telling my camera it should be at. Over here on my right, it shows the camera settings. It's estimated a 19.76 millimeter focal length, which is the zoom, right? 100 millimeters is zoomed in really close. 10 millimeters is ultra like wide fisheye lens. So this is about accurate. Shot with the lens I'm using right now, actually, my 16 to 35 millimeter lens. And let's look at the original photo metadata and see what it was shot with. So this is the raw image. Look at that, focal length 21 millimeters. That's from my camera. And Blender says 19, so that's pretty close. Close enough for me. And most importantly, other than focal length being set, you also have your rotational axis, and which includes, your horizon line, how far up or down it was, and all that. And that's really important. The rotation is really what makes your camera match a real world camera. And I'll show you what happens when you get the rotations wrong. It really screws with stuff. So I'm going to get rid of this image with the background. I'm going to replace it with the one that has no background. There we go. So we got my people. Am I still underground? I thought I moved it up. GZ. There we go. And as long as we're moving it flat, X, Y, and Z, we're not rotating. We're maintaining the scene camera, basically. If I do this, then we just mess it all up. We cannot rotate. You can only move up and down, left and right, or forwards and backwards with straight directions. So the height is really important. Let me slide this to a good place in my scene. I'm not seeing. Oh, that's why. It's in the middle of the world. Way back here. Okay. Everything's so large, it's not liking that. Let's try that. Okay, it's a little closer. I can move stuff around from here. So this looks good. This is kind of the composition that I wanted roughly. Except I want that background building ginormous. There you go. All right. So what happens if we have the wrong rotations? So this is really important when you're compositing your people into a fake world. Whether you're using stock photos or 3D, the same rules apply. Watch what happens if I rotate my camera, if I dip it forwards or backwards. Let's see, get things set here. So watch this. If I tilt my camera down, it looks like falling backwards. Oh, boom. They're leaning backwards. Why? What's really happening here is the horizon line is not in the right place. So before I had perspective plotter, what I would do is I would open my original image in Photoshop and I would draw red lines over the image and I would save that as a separate version called lines. And those lines would be the horizon line and any leading lines that go back to the 0-point perspective in the infinity background. And those red lines, I would have to have a whole bunch of it. It looked like a Japanese fan design because all the lines would be going back based on the real setting that my photo was taken in, like the bricks or whatever. And I would bring that into Blender and I would try to line up the horizon first so that my tilt, right, this is correct. The horizon not too high, not too low. And then next I would, of course, get this kind of rotation if I had any kind of tilt, which usually don't want to do that. And then this, if I would need to look to the left or to the right. And that's kind of cool, isn't it? Isn't that weird? This would be so fun to do a music video, like shot on here, which you totally can do. If you haven't already, please go and have your minds blown by a guy named Ian Hubert on YouTube. He is the Blender demigod, just underneath the creator of Blender, and he is awesome. He's done Hollywood quality stuff straight within Blender. Even the chroma key he does in Blender. It's just so cool. So we've got our angle set. I'm happy with this. This looks right. Now the scaling. Let's talk about scaling. So they're not really sitting. They're not really standing on the ground plane that I have in 3D. This is just an image. It's a flat image that happens to be facing completely flat towards the camera, right? It's just a card cut out in front of the camera lens. So if I move my camera straight up or down, we get the effect of scale. So if I put them up here, they're huge. Look at that. They're towering over the city because they're mega people. I don't want that. If we go down too low, teeny tiny little people, that's not right either. So we have to find a healthy medium, and I try to judge visually. So what do we have here to judge? This is all pretty sci-fi and abstract, but we do have a road, and we generally are used to seeing roads. A car can fit in one aisle, a lane, and the other car or two can fit in the other lane. This is just a 2-lane street, which is one directional, which is kind of weird. This must be downtown. I don't know. I didn't think about that when I made that street. So let's get a good height where I feel that we could get the Abbey Road shot, right? The Beatles walking across the street with the right scale. So they look a little too big right here. So I'm going to move down a little bit because I feel like all these 5 people could probably stand like this in the scale and the size of one lane, like that. That's a little too big, too small. Yeah, somewhere in there. You could get really detailed and start doing measurements. Like you can measure their height. You can bring in Blender measurements and measure the width of things and make sure that each story of your building is like 9 feet or whatever the measurement is, and do all that. You can, but I don't. Still feel like these lines are just too big. You can of course scale the road too. You just do like this. But I do want their height to look like they could walk into a building and not bump their head on the ceiling. That's probably the hardest part of compositing, is just getting the perspective right. And then next is the lighting, which when you're in Blender is not as hard because you can do whatever the heck you want. You can tell I used a pink gel pretty hard on this right side. And on the left side, I had a light blue, a pale blue one. So we can do that. I could just add a point light over here, blue, and pink, and the buildings will reflect that. And the street will also literally reflect whatever colors I add, and it'll make it match the actual photo that I made. I'm sure I'm not missing any comments over here. Okay. Yeah, if you guys have any other questions, just chime in and ask. Okay. So let's work on our 3D world and get some nice lighting, because right now it's just got the basic one light Blender gives you. It's not looking amazing. So let's get out of our camera view. This is our world. Doesn't look bad, but it doesn't look great. So I'm going to do 2 sunlights. So in Blender, you have different types of light objects. There's point, which is literally a point of light. Right now it's super weak, so you don't see anything. Oh, look how the buildings are glowing. That's so cool. I love that. You've got sun, which I like because the light rays are always parallel. It doesn't spread out like a normal light goes out and disperses outwards. All light rays are always straight. So that emulates the sun really good. We've got a spotlight here, which why am I not seeing anything? It's too far off the ground and not bright enough. And then we've got an area light, which is like a little square that you can control the size like that. A square, light panel basically. Let's see if I can get it. It's starting to come in. Let's just make it like 2,000. Okay, 20,000. Oh, I messed up my zeros. There we go. Good for dramatic lighting, like a studio setup, Got a softbox, basically, is what it looks like. And they just introduced the spread feature, which is really nice. Check this out. So I can control how much the light spreads. Now it's a straight light, like a gobo of just square, because that's the shape of it. And you can change it to other shapes too. Circle, disc, pretty cool. But this spread will make it spread out more. Very handy for controlling things. But we're going to go to sunlight, because that's what we got. We got, oh my gosh, 2,000 watt sun, 20,000 watt sun right here. Let's change that to, what was it, like 10 maybe? Yeah, 10-ish. But in Cyberpunk world, it's always nighttime, right? It's like Gotham. There is no sunny days in Gotham. There just never is. So I'm going to keep it kind of dim. Oh, my camera died. I knew that was going to happen. Let me replace that. Hopefully it's not overheating. Good old Canon mirrorless camera. Love to overheat. Let's do this. There we go. I'm back on. Let me go if you guys can see me again. Yeah, cool. Oh, I'm glad that worked. So we got our normal sun, which is, of course, going to be a pink sun, right? What else would it be? And then we're going to have another sun over here that's blue. It's going to be a little bit weaker. I like to have lights at different values. That's just a photography thing. I never have 2 opposite lights at the same power. It just is uninteresting and undynamic. This one will be like a pale bluish, like that. This will be, if you want to call it our main light, I'll put it at 4. Cool. So there we go. We already got some great color casts. It's kind of like color grading our scene with 3D lights. So we've got that. We can, of course, control the angle, which will give us different shadows. Let's see if I rotate this. Ooh, nice. So backlight maybe. And the other one opposite, like that, front lighting. And you can control the spread. So the angle right here, angle number, if you put it at a high number, it'll be very soft. Let me hide my other light so you can really see what it's doing. There we go. See, 0 is no dispersion, no spread. But as you raise it up, this light is softer and softer. It's essentially the size of the light source. And the larger the light source, the more blur of the shadows. Cool. Kind of like diffusion. That's what umbrellas do in photography, if you're just curious. They spread out the light angles and you get more soft shadows, which is good for portraits. I will stop teaching photography, I promise. So I'm going to keep the main light at a sharper, harsher light, so a smaller angle. And I don't know if I'll keep these 2 angles, but let's just gotta start somewhere. And there, and then that looks cool. Let's move these buildings a little bit closer. So Y, look at that shadow. We got a shadow coming. X, move it closer to the street. You barely see it. Oh, here's another thing I did when I was playing with this was, if we want a wider angle, which I think is good for this scene because it's such a cool background, we can do that by scaling down their image. So scale. Now, ultimately, we're going to put the people in using Photoshop. But this just gives us kind of a compositional guide, and you can offset it X and Y. You can move them around if you want to make them higher or lower. That'll also mess with the scale. So it'll be another teeny tiny. Look at that. That's a weird, huge. I'll keep the Y the same where it needs to be. But yeah. So they're smaller, and now I see more building, which is good. So I'm going to move this back now a little bit to show more of the building. I like those little under ceiling lights that I built. Move this in and move it way closer to see what this is really looking like. And there we go. If I could show my 8-year-old self this back in the 90s when I was playing SimCity, I would have peed myself. And these windows, let's check out on the scale. I'm gonna go to object mode so it's not so laggy, and this is real-time rendering, by the way. Okay, so this is one story, right? This is one height. A human can walk into this as if it was a door. I don't see any doors, but that's one height right there. So we want to make sure that that is roughly the same as the other building. So I'm going to make a cube. This is something I literally just thought of, and I'm going to size it up. So let's say this is one story, right? The height of this. Let's move it over and compare it to this guy. Put it right on the ground. And yeah, I'm going to scale this whole building up just a little bit and move it back. Oops, I just hit hide. Move it back. There we go. Okay, this is kind of our ruler, right? A rough ruler, at least for close-up stuff. I think it's good to have some consistency. Cool, yeah. It's like those look you could walk across the street and not have any issues. No shrinking mushrooms. I want some buildings to be low and some to be high. I'm just kind of cheating here. I'm just moving buildings up and down because you can't see the base back there. It's covered up. The cool building. Ooh, I like that part of the building, but it's you can rotate 90 degrees. Still gets nice detail. Yeah. Right there. And here's a building that I want peeking up just above right there. And this will cover up the ground part. Cool. Nothing's intersecting the road. That one's a little close, but it's okay. Awesome. Much more interesting skyline there. Okay. Let's see. Oh, let's bring in some props. Let's dress this up and make it look cooler and more interesting and realistic, because a scene like this is okay, but it can be 4 times better if you have some good props and details that don't distract, but they amplify your story, right? They help you tell the story that, hey, this is a lived-in place. Like there's trash on the ground. There's wires on that building. There's signs on the door, things like that. So let's open up our asset browser, which I have a love-hate relationship with. Oh my gosh, I just crashed Blender. That's embarrassing. It's okay. It's got a recovery file. That's crazy. Recovery, autosave, right here. Let's see how far back I autosaved. Loading textures. Come on, there we go. Yeah, well, I didn't lose anything. Phew, let's save this, shall we? Save as. Well, that's the number one. Always save. And set up your auto save in your set preferences. You can have it save like every minute, which I think I do as fast as I can.
Does that mess with the stability of Blender?
Perhaps, because it is a newer feature, but I've never had Asset Browser crash, and I wasn't even in live render, so I don't know what happened.
Okay.
That was very strange. I've had Blender. Blender will crash occasionally. It's really not as unstable as you may think it is, being open source. But it's usually when I'm pushing it really hard with if I'm doing real-time render and I load something else and it's just a lot, sometimes it'll crash, but not very common. So where were we? Asset browser, kit bash, library. These are different libraries. And then inside are the catalogs. And I made one called, where is it? Props and accessories. Okay. Actually, let's go to the cars. Let's do the cars first because those are cool. All right, so there's some normal like passenger cars that I'll have on the side of the street. And then I've got some like freight carrying things. So let's drag and drop, just drop them in here. If I featured this car more in the scene, like if someone was standing leaning on their car, then I would be spending a lot more time modeling these guys. But these are like so basic. Just a little subdivision. This is pretty cool. I do like this one. Very quick and dirty. Which one did I not do? These are the big ones. These are like this is an 18-wheeler in the future. 18 hover jet. There, and then I think that's pretty much all of them. Did I do this one? No. Okay, so let's place these around. I think the one that had the most cool features that should be closer to the camera is probably this one. I do love this. Is you can tell these are definitely inspired by Blade Runner. What are they called? Spinners. Even though there's nothing that spins on a spinner, I don't know why they're called that. Scale's a little funky. Okay, so let's put this one over here on the side of the road, and I'm going to move my building too. Make some room for it. Oh, there's my cube, my measuring cube. And then I think the other one that would look pretty cool up close was it this one? Yeah. And I'll put the rest of these up in the air, flying around. Whoop, wee. How terrifying is that? The thought of people flying their cars around in the air, around buildings, bad idea. Unless everything is completely automated by AI and there's like force fields involved. No, thank you. Sure looks cool on Coruscant, though, in Star Wars. Maybe have one going. Oops. This is Amazon hover ship. Not too many. I don't want to be distracting. I just wanted you to be like, oh yeah, there's cars in the air. Cool. Little shuttle here taking off. I'm gonna make this one vertical. Way over yonder. And not even be visible. Where is it? It's so tiny. I'll make it bigger. Okay, I want these guys to be a little bit more visible. So move that up there. It's inside the ground, so put it above the ground. It is a hover car. Make sure there's room over here to park. Picking up his Soylent Green burgers. Yeah, it's a little distracting. A little too many cars, I think. I'll put this one on the ground. This one's got some cool under lights. Let's see what it looks like in render view. Oh yeah, beautiful. I like how the light shines off of metallic maps. There's a roughness in a metallic map that gives it just variety, so it's not all the same shininess. It's got some grit, some detail there. And when it's rendered at high quality, you'll really be able to see the details there. So that's good. Cool. I'm just trying to make it not look distracting. I don't want to be too busy. Okay, great. Now let's get some little props and decorations. We got to do the street lights. Here we go. And the cool thing about assets right now, well, I mean, it's not going to change, but I like that it maintains my modifiers. So in Blender, you have things called modifiers, such as the mirror modifier and the array. So I've only made one light stand, but the array gives me control over how many instances there are, copies. And then the mirror mirrors it along the origin, which I have actually over here. So the origin of the model is not in the middle of the model, it's over here. So it just flip-flops it over there. And these are destroying these cars right now. So we gotta, sorry, let me move this up. Maybe, oops. There. And these have light emitting textures, emissions. So there will be light being cast down. Let's go to render view. See what this looks like. You can make it brighter or weaker if we need it to be. So street light, yeah, it's only at 20. So as we go up to 100, let's see what it looks like. Yeah, you can see there's a lot more ambient light on the ground.
It's starting to get so pretty.
Yeah, I know. It's cyberpunk color scheme. It'll look even more pretty, even prettier when we render and we use the glare compositor node. You can do compositing in Blender, and some of the features of the compositor are just filters, like the glare, which adds a nice glow on your brighter parts. So
why not stay in EV and just do the glow option?
Because EV doesn't have ray tracing. So let me show you. I'll show you why I don't use EV. This does not look bad, but it doesn't look wow. This is like PlayStation 1 to me. But when you switch to cycles, now the light is bouncing, is reflecting, there's ray tracing, there's global illumination, all that stuff. So it really changes the realness, the reality of your scenes, I feel. And you can also do the glow in Photoshop. You could render a separate, once you've rendered your normal image, your background, JPEG or whatever, PNG, that's your like normal image that we were going to see. But you can also render separate passes. So I could render just the emissions textures. I'll actually show you what it would look like. It'd be pretty cool. So I can view, now you can view new individual passes. So where's the emissions? I'm missing it. There it is. Oh, look at that. So this will be emissions pass. Only the glowing elements get rendered. And I can bring this into Photoshop, and you probably guessed it, add some blur and some glow, and have fun with it. You can also render ambient occlusion, which is kind of like your natural cavity shadows pass, which if you want to play with that in Photoshop, you can render just the shadows. That looks pretty cool. It's very noir, like a newspaper. All the different elements that the computer is calculating into a 3D image, you can render separately. And doing passes like that is a really great way to do legitimate compositing in Photoshop. Sorry, trying to find some. There we go. So lots of options there. My friend Danny Burns has some really good videos about how he does. He renders like 5 or 6 different passes, and he uses the EXR format, which is like the highest quality. There's no image loss. There's a lot of color depth and data there, and he brings those separate passes into Photoshop, and just really goes to town on it. So he's got some good stuff on that. If you're interested. Trying to think anything else I want to do. Oh, let's set up a mist pass. One of my favorite passes is the mist, which is basically going to give us depth, like your 3D, cameras on your iPhone and stuff like that is actually making a black and white image from far to near or near to far. And we can do that, and we can use that in Photoshop as well to add some fog and some atmosphere. Because just like Gotham, cyberpunk cities are always full of pollution. So let's go to our passes and make sure mist is checked right there. And then we have to set it up. So let's go to our camera. Did I hide my camera again? There it is. Go to your camera tab, go down to viewport display. We need to turn on mist so we can actually see it. And then last, we get to set up the distance and the depth of the mist pass. So let me go to an above view so we can see what the heck I'm talking about. See this little line? That's the starting and ending of your mist. So I wanted to start pretty close to the camera, and then the depth is how deep it is. I want to go all the way back to that. Wireframe. Oh, it crashed again. I promise Blender doesn't crash this much.
No program is perfect. I'm now, when I was using Maya in the classroom, it crashed a few times.
Oh, see, it didn't get my mist that I was setting up. So let's go back and do that. Well, nothing is greater than when Windows had a blue screen of death at a live show when Bill Gates was doing a demonstration. Classic. All right. Viewport display, turn on mist. Now we can see the line. Go to world settings. I have a few videos that cover this, by the way.
Didn't Elon Musk do a demonstration on how his windows were like bulletproof?
Oh yeah, it cracked.
Cracked.
Oh man. You know what? If he can land a rocket on its bottom, I'm going to give him some slack.
Huh.
Cool. Okay, so now we have the depth set up. I'm actually going to do my first. I'm going to save this. Control S.
And we've got 4 minutes before 15-minute break.
Okay, cool. Then I may do that in a really high quality render while we're on break. Maybe that'll work out.
Okay.
So I'm going to go to my render settings, and because I clicked on that perspective plotter to match my image that I used of the people to my Blender scene, look at this. My render resolution for Blender is the same as my image resolution that I used. So 5,000 by 3,000 pixels. I'm going to do this down to like 40% just as a test render, and I'll put my samples. Oh, no, sorry, that was my output settings. You get resolution. Your render tab is where you set your samples. I'm just going to keep it at 64. Make sure denoise is turned on. And let's hit render. And I am using, my PC has a 2080 Ti that my computer guy told me was overclocked. I don't know what that means. As far as GPUs, I don't know how he did that, but he said it was. And then I've got 64 gigs of RAM. I had 32. I just
so overclocking is basically making your processor run faster than what it was originally intended to do.
Like beyond heat constraints or what? Like
no, just beyond the factory settings. So the key usually is that you buy a heavier duty fan to help cool off the processor while you're in overclocking mode, or increase the fan speed.
Oh, cool. So this is the first render. Not bad. It's a little flat, but there's no glow. There's not a lot of props and little details. We don't have a sky, and we haven't done a whole lot with the lighting. We just set up 2 suns. So pretty good for a first test render. I'm going to turn on my compositor by going to my split screen over here and going to my compositor editor. I need to check use nodes. So now, wow, it's really small. Now we can use nodes for compositing. My favorite one is the glare node. So Shift A, click on search, and just type in GL glare. When you drop this in here, I'm going to change it to fog glow, high quality, and the threshold is basically the threshold of what's going to glow and what's not. So I might need to oh, there we go. It's already working. I'm going to do a split screen so we can see the render change in real time. So it's not re-rendering. This is just post effects, basically. Image editor, show my render down here. There we go. Okay, cool. So with my threshold, as I move it up, pretty high. Oh, I'm on high quality. Let me go to medium. It's a little slower. So if I put my threshold really low, like everything's going to glow. Too many things. So you can be a little bit more picky. Right now, only the streetlights are glowing. They go up now. The building shines are glowing, like this bar, and the reflections off the sides of the buildings are glowing now. They've got some hazy glare, which I love. And the size of it, you can control. It's a little big. It's kind of a big cloud. Go down to 7. There we go. It's a little better. I recently got a really awesome plugin for Photoshop. It's called Optics. It's by Boris Red, which makes the classic lens flare add-ons or plugins. And Optics is really cool because there's a bunch of filters that are really nice. Some of them are procedural, like lens flare filters. There's all kinds of glow filters that are really nice. There's a bunch of color grading ones and vintage stuff. I might show that. I might not because it's a paid thing. It costs me about $100. But if you do a lot of effects and overlays and things like that, and you're getting bored of using images all the time for overlays, Optics is a pretty cool tool to use.
All right. So it is that time.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to just leave your screen alone, and I'm just going to share my screen.
Okay.
15-minute break.
Cool.
Bathroom break, snack break, get out, stretch your legs, all that stuff.
Awesome. Hit render.
And when it's done, when the 15-minute mark ends, we will be back with Daniel Grove. Excellent job.
Thank you.
Great job, Daniel. Thank you so much. All right. We'll be back in about approximately 15 minutes.
Okay.
I think we had a couple of questions in the chat box. So one of them is he said he thought he missed something. All of those buildings, cars, lamps, etc., are they libraries or Were they all libraries already, or did you put it together yourself?
So both. The buildings, I didn't build any of the buildings. I could if I spent a little time, but I didn't have to. So those are all Kitbash 3D assets that were purchased. You can find some similar ones on Sketchfab, maybe Blender. What is it called? Blender. Oh, there's a website for free stuff. I'm forgetting what it is. Blendswap.com. There's not a good selection there, but sketchfab.com for sure. You can find some buildings in there for free or purchase a set for cheap. Honestly, these shapes, if you look at them, they're very simple. It's really all about the texture. It's the textures that make it look nice. This is like such a boring mesh, right? So if you like the buildings like this, if you find yourself needing to make lots of buildings, you can easily find. I will show you what it's going to look like. Let's go to texture.com. I think they're called building facades. It's usually that didn't work out. Textures.com. Yeah, there it is. So let's type in facade. I think that's how you say it. And these are generally sides of buildings like this, these. If you get these flat, this is a flat image. It's just wrapped around a sphere. See, that is basically the 3D version of it. If you stick that onto a cube, you've got a building. Add a little bit of indentation with maybe the ridges, and add a beveled corner, some stuff on top, and you got yourself a building that's going to look fine in the background. So it's really not hard building buildings. They're pretty simple meshes. This is beautiful right here. Look at this. Oh, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Come on, zoom. Show me the big version. Whatever. I could easily stick this on some cubes and make a decent looking building for a background asset. So don't feel like you can't make them your own. You don't have to buy them. But if you want to learn how to make those, there's plenty of Ian Hubert's got some really good ones about how to find these types of textures and stick them on images and make it look real, make it look interesting, and have fun with it. This is a nice one right here. I like that one. It's got some AC units sticking out of it. Cool. So yeah, textures.com is great for that stuff. Okay. The cars I made myself. The Greebles will be adding some set dressing, some little details in the scene. Those I got for free on Sketchfab. There's a bunch of Greeble and sci-fi prop packs you can get for free. So hopefully that answers your question. So right when our break came on, I realized there's a few things I didn't do that I didn't want to render this yet. I was going to do a big high quality render. I won't do that yet, but I want to show you guys a few more things that I'll do to give realism to the scene. One of the biggest things is depth of field. That is the blurry background and or foreground, and that's how cameras work. It's just a rule of optics. There are certain settings you use that can enhance it, like what I use for portraits. I like blurry backgrounds for my portraits when I do like senior pictures or whatever, or models. But I like to add a little bit of background blur to add realism, because the background that's miles away is crisp and pixel perfect. It's distracting to the human eye. Human eyes, when we look at images, whether they're real or fake, video or still, we're usually drawn to humans' eyes first, or faces. We're also drawn to brightest areas first, and then we go to the next priority down from that, which is detail and leading lines, perspective lines that draw your eye somewhere. So blurring the background realistically with real depth of blur in your 3D program is really helpful to give that subconscious level of, hey, this is a real place. Like that thing is far away, and the camera is focused up close, which leads to blurry backgrounds. So let's do that. So I'm going to select my camera object in Blender, and I'm going to go to viewport display and turn on limits. So we already have mist turned on, which is that starting point and end point for the mist depth render. I'll show you what it looks like later. It's pretty cool. But we're now going to turn on limits, which will show us where the focus point is. Now we go down to depth of field and turn that on. That's right below there. And let me zoom into the camera here. Now you got this crosshair that wasn't there before. See that? That is our distance of where the camera is focused. We can focus close, which will blur the background more, or we can focus far, and that will blur the background less. So I'm going to put it right around where the cars are, because if we look at it, they are, 0 over here. Oh, I hid my background image earlier for reference. There we go. So they are in front of the cars. So the focus point should be right where my 3D cursor is. I just clicked with a 3D cursor tool, and this is stuck on top of the surface of the road. If you don't do that, if you're having trouble, select your 3D cursor tool. Now you can click on any 3D surface and it'll stick. So right here is where they are. Now if I change my 3D and 3D, I can see. I basically set a marker. There it is. That's where the feet are of the reference image that is invisible because it's not in the 3D space. It's just on the camera. So I want my focus to be right there. So drag it in. Sorry, my view's getting a little weird. There we go. Yeah, that's maybe back a little bit more. Cool. So now the camera is focused roughly where they are standing in 3D space. And the background is really blurry. That's a little too blurry. That's not quite realistic. So let's turn our f-stop, which is funny that we have f-stop in Blender because that's the camera setting that we have in real cameras. If we go to like close to 0, look at that. Crazy blurry bokeh. Pretty cool, but just not realistic. I'm going to tone it down. I'm holding shift. Let's try .5. Let's see what that looks like. Give it a second to real-time render and zoom into the background. Yeah, you can see that the car is, details not really there. Let's try 1. 1 is a little bit of blur. I like in between. So let's do .75. Cool. Yeah, nice. Okay, so depth of field looks great. That'll be in the final render. I did move this car off the ground a little bit so it would appear to be hovering. And I want to make sure there's some underlights under here. I'm going to solo this object. I don't think I have any underlights yet, so we need to fix that. So I'm just going to grab a few of these little faces. Add some glow right there, and right. No, not that one. And I got some really janky geometry in here. For those of you that like model appropriately, you're probably cringing right now because I don't do subdividing a lot. So, okay, let's do that color. And maybe something right here. Then look at this. Oh my gosh, look at this face. It is so screwed up. I think this vertex out here just needs to go back. I don't know. It's not visible, okay? Not a big deal. Okay, so leave that there. I just wanted some light coming from below the car while it hovers over the ground. Oh, Blender's thinking. When you go back to material mode, it's like it has to load the images into your RAM, and then it's good to go. All right, so I'm going to do some set dressing here. So off camera, when y'all were on break, I dropped a few greebly pieces here, like some containers. I also stuck some onto the side of this building here. This one has an array. Got this random coupling piece. And we're going to also do some signs. You got to have obnoxious signs because the future of advertising is just brainwashing you with things. You can't escape, right? I already experienced that with YouTube and the like. So let's go to my asset browser here. I got this pack open with some greebly pieces here. I'm just going to drop some stuff on the sides of these buildings. Maybe it's part of an AC unit. Maybe it's like a camera, a scanner, a port for droids to plug into to pick up your order. You just never know. It's a nice little hatch right there. Oh.
The killer dog.
Someone was at my front door. And my dog is going crazy. Okay, so we got a few little greebly pieces there. Let's do some crates. We got to have crates. I'm going to put a crate right by this front of this car. I'm going to move this thing over. Nice stack of crates here, which I think is using an array. So that's cool. We can make it really tall. I want that. Maybe just 2. Let's check out the composition. Where is it going to be in my scene? It's a little big. So I'm going to move it back. There. Cool. And that's good for that. Let's do some signs. This is the fun part. So I've got a catalog of signs. Some of these there's a good, sorry, my dog is barking in the background. There's a good set of signs you can get for free on dog. Yeah, that dog is half Yorkie, half Dachshund. So lots of barking. My gosh. I'm tempted to go get the dog and put it away. So here's my little catalog that I made of signs. And they're all flat, and I think they all have emissions materials, which means emissions emits light based on the color data that's coming into it. So I will show you what they do. Let's stick one on the side of this building right here. Plop. There we go. It's rotated funky, so let's fix that. Go. And I also am using a grid texture for alpha. So you can see it kind of has like, it's transparent. Zoom into it. I imagined cost-efficient holograms would work like that, not being solid. That dog is annoying me. Okay, there's another one. A lot of these are rotated weird, which is my fault. I need to fix the orientation. When you make these assets, you need to make sure the rotation is the correct one. Okay, let's make sure we can actually see them. See, that one I can't see, so I'm going to put it up here. Make sure it's not stuck inside. Yep. Okay, let's put this one up here. This one has like a cool frame to it. It's up big time. I think I made this one. I don't remember. I made a few of these graphics in Photoshop. I made a big old like stacked image of stuff, and I use UV just to only show some of it. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Here, I think I called it cyber ads. Yeah. So I made this in Photoshop. Just random stuff, some stock photos, random words, Chinese symbols. And I'm using UV unwrapping with the material to decide which graphic it sees. So like right now, I could change this. Watch this. Where is it? Oh, I'm not in UV editor. Sorry. There we go. So if I move this to there, boom, we got a new ad. New ad. So I just duplicate the asset and just choose, where I want it to focus. And you could size it up, show more of the image. There's a quick and dirty UV unwrapping. And I'm going to do that. I'm going to make a few of these. Here. Give it a unique material so it doesn't ruin what I just did. Cool. And then one more. Unique material over here. Nice drink. I don't remember what these symbols say, so forgive me. Cool. So in our camera view, we can see some nice signages. Oh my gosh, that dog. I'm going to get that dog. Hold on a second. And that was that. What was I doing? Don't even think about it. All right, let's go back to asset browse and drop a few more signs in here, and then we will be done with the Blender stage. Once we get a little render going, we'll bring that into Photoshop. Cool. Oh, that one's really big. It's not intersecting things. There we go. Hopefully that symbol is not upside down. I do not know Japanese. So I'm just dropping these onto the geometry. What I love about Blender is that it knows the direction of the faces. So if I just drop this on, you can see it'll follow. Like I go up here, it'll do flat around the cylinder. Pretty cool. Okay. So Alex, is it obnoxious enough? Brainwashy enough? Advertising everywhere. We got to have something in that little corner right there. Let's do this guy. Oh, that's definitely a wrong orientation.
Did you check to make sure that those random things don't contain offensive things?
No, I didn't. I should. I don't remember if I looked up kanji symbols and like got specific words. I don't remember how I made this a while back, so a few years ago. It'd be that classic American tourist that gets like Japanese symbols tattooed on, and it ends up being stupid words like burger and poop and
right.
The Japanese people look at you and they just okay.
Apply at your own risk.
What's that?
Apply at your own risk.
Yeah. Okay. That's pretty good. I do want to have one down low on like ground level. There we go. Okay, so that's good. So we got depth of field set. We have signs. They're all glowing. Let's go to render view and see them glowing nicely. Hopefully, yeah, cool. It just adds so much, pops the color. It may be distracting. Like maybe some of these can go away. Like maybe that one's a little bit much. That one's cool. Yeah, I think that's a decent balance right now. And let's go. Oh, I also did another trick here. When you do renders, if you don't have anything in your, I don't want to say background because that word means a lot, but if there's nothing in the true background back here, you can render that as transparent pixels, which you would export as a PNG or EXR or TIFF for alpha. So to do that, you go to your render tab settings, scroll down and go to film. Well, at least for me, I have to scroll down and then check transparent. So it actually shows you the transparent checkers versus not. So if that checked, when you render, you'll have nothing in that black, space, which allows me to put skies or whatever back there. Because there's a little bit of space for some sky texture. So I'm going to render this. I'll put it at half resolution, 50%, and I'll turn the noise samples up to.
Oh, we lost your voice.
Hello. Can you hear me?
There we go.
Weird.
Now you're back.
So I'm going to render this at 50% resolution of my original image. And then I would normally render 100%, but I want this to be fast. And then I'm going to do 128 samples. Samples are basically, I kind of think of them as digital photons. If you have a low not as full and true as it would be in real life. So the higher light samples you get, the better light simulation you'll get, and it'll be less noisy, little grainy, noisy things. You don't want fireflies. But it does take longer because the GPU or CPU is calculating longer. Cool. I'm reading your comment here. Yeah, it's great, and it is a steep learning curve, especially if you're new to Blender. I mean, that's the only thing you kind of have to learn too. But as you start building your library of buildings and trees and rocks and sci-fi panels, whatever the stuff you feel like you'll use most of, as you start building that library, it'll get faster and faster. I can throw together an environment in like 15 minutes now because I got stuff that I can use, and it's a lot faster. When I started, I was very slow. So don't give up. Keep learning Blender, please, because it is such an awesome tool for multiple industries. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to do before I hit render. I think it's good. We got depth of field set right where they're standing. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to save. I'm going to make sure it doesn't crash again. And I'll hit render. And then I will pull up Photoshop and I'll show you how I cut out people from the background. That's probably one of the most popular topics is how do I remove backgrounds? Well, there's a lot of ways. There is not one answer. Photoshop literally has like 7 different ways to cut out backgrounds, and I'll show you my favorites. So F12 for render, and we'll let that start. It won't take long. It'll probably take a minute. It's not like I'm not doing a very high quality render right now. It's already, see the noise, these dots? As I wait longer, the samples are counting up and higher, and eventually it'll fill in all the gaps and it'll just be pure samples, which is a higher quality render, better, more realistic lighting, and then the denoising will, just like you would probably expect, it smooths it out. So if you want to do a render, look at my light stands, my night lights. It's actually the building. The building is crooked. Ugh. I'm gonna stop that. I gotta fix it. I can't. What was I saying? Oh yeah. So if you want to do a really great, clean-looking render it like 1,000 samples or something like that, in the hundreds or even in the thousands, depending on your resolution. And the denoising will take care of the rest. It'll smooth out the little gaps in the middle. So re-render that, and let's go to Photoshop while that renders. Hopefully, I don't overheat my computer. Okay, so let's open the CR2. This is a raw file straight out of my camera. I did do some slider edits in Lightroom. You can see there's sliders applied, which is non-destructive editing that applies to the raw data. And I like this setting right here. It's kind of desaturated. It's crunchy because we got a lot of high clarity. Clarity is great in Lightroom. Textures up to give some crunchy detail. I have vibrance down in the negative, but I'm going to turn it up a little bit. I do want this to be a vibrant one. Yeah, that's cool. And you can make it a little bit cooler, a little bit warmer. Definitely in the cooler spectrum for Cyberpunk, I feel. Okay, that's good. Open. Close this panel. Cool. And Blender's probably already done. Let's see what it's doing. Well, it's at 112 out of 128 samples. And after this, it'll smooth it all out and make it look decent. So there are a ton of ways to erase backgrounds. Essentially, you want to make a selection, and then you use masking to turn that selection into a black or white mask, which hides or reveals certain parts of your layer. So the most common and quickest way to do a subject select is to use the subject select, which you go to the select and then subject, and it will automatically, using AI in the cloud now, will select around your object and give you a good selection. And it's not great right here because the contrast is not super contrasty. The better your contrast is between background and subject, the more accurate your selection will be. I've had times where a good sharp photo with a dark background and a light foreground or vice versa, and I've done the subject select and it will be like 99% perfect. Maybe a little bit of touch up, maybe, but it grabs it great. The subject select is awesome and I really love it. As you can see, the contrast over here is really high. So this is pretty good. Needs a little bit of touch up. There's no gun, didn't get her head. So it didn't really do a good job right here. But I promise the subject select is normally way more accurate. So what would I do to fix this, right? There's a few things you can do. I will use the quick selection tool, which is over here for me. I press W, but everyone's toolbars are a little different. So for me, W cycles through these different tools. The quick selection tool is awesome because it works like a brush, but it builds your selection. So watch, if I click and drag over her head, bloop, 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 it's building the selection. It's working on the edges, finding where the edges of things are. It's doing pretty good. I'll zoom in a little closer. This one will work really good right here because this shirt is very sharp. Awesome. Look at that. Perfectly along the edge. Now, if there's things that are selected that you don't want to be selected, you can hold Alt to basically subtract from your selection. And it works the same way. See, I got around his edge of his arm. Got up in that crevice. Oh, that's nice. I'm still holding Alt or Option on Mac. Down here is a little fuzzy because the lightness is, okay. So I'm just adding to and taking away from the selection here. Alt to take away, not Alt to build or add to the selection. I want this to be in the selection because this is going to turn into a mask which will hide the background. So this is kind of one of the early steps. Is I will use selection tools like this to, as much as possible, automatically grab around a person. Yeah, so true. IB Wizard, man, selections were a pain in the butt back in the day. It was manual. You just get in close and use your lasso tool to draw around people. What a headache. Also, if you find yourself doing lots of selections like this, lots of, custom selections, cutouts, or retouching, I highly advise you get a stylus tablet. Wacom is the popular brand, but there's also some really cheap ones called
SenseLab.
What's that?
SenseLab.
Oh yeah, is that a company that makes those?
Yep.
The one I was thinking was Huion. Theirs are like $50 to $100.
Yeah, those are the little more inexpensive ones. I'll put on SenseLab link up here.
Cool, thanks. I hadn't heard of that company. Yeah, there's Wacom, whatever is the big dog, but there's plenty of other brands that you can get more for your bang for your buck. Okay, so I'm not going to do this whole image like this, but you get the point. You can use that auto, what is it called? Quick selection tool, very handy. Another thing you can do is you can build your selection using brushing. So if I press Q, which is quick mask, now we have red and not red areas of our photo. So everything that was inside the selection is not red, and everything that is outside is red. And now I can use the brush tool using black or white to easily paint in or out certain areas. Oops, I screwed that up. So black is not selected, white is selected. I'm going to make my brush real sharp. This is that using that round brush that Photoshop comes with. You can make it hard or soft. And so I will often scan through my photo and just go through all the edges and just paint stuff in. Oh, hair. I hate hair. That requires a few other tools to get to do right. But yeah, I will, and I have my left hand. I'm right-handed. So I have my left hand on the X button, which will invert your brush color with one push. So I can very easily flip between yes and no for my masking. So here's another cool trick that I wish I learned years ago is the shift button. If you hold shift between brush strokes, watch this, it'll draw a straight line. If I'm holding shift, just painting away. Very handy. I love holding shift. I do it most often when I'm following people's bodies like this. It literally is saving you time of tedious using your mouse or your stylus to draw lines. You don't have to anymore. Perfectly straight lines. As you can imagine, this is saving so much freaking time. And then I'll, of course, make a bigger brush and fill in around here and make it, solid, whatever. You can be messy here. It doesn't matter. But so this image did take a long time to do the selection because there's 5 people. I normally just do one person for composites. So it did require a little extra work. The comments here. Yeah, the refined hair is really cool. They've improved that too. I'm a little rusty on that because I don't do that too often. So forgive me about that. But yeah, so once we get our selection good, I actually exported my original mask from the image that I finished a few years ago. I have it in my folder here. Here it is, my black and white. I'm going to drop it on top. Turn off my quick mask mode. There we go. So this black and white image with nice hair detail there is the 99% perfect mask that I used in my original photo for my finished product. So I'm going to turn this into a mask by basically just copy and pasting it. I do need to rasterize the layer first. So right click on my layer. You can see this little icon down here in the bottom right. That means it's a smart object, which is not rasterized pixels. So I'm going to right click on my layer, rasterize. Now I can do Control A to select everything, Control C to copy, hide it by clicking on the eyeball. And I'm going to make a layer mask by clicking on this white rectangle with the black circle in the middle. So there's a layer mask. It's all white, which means visible, right? Black is hidden, white is visible. So my entire mask is white, which means everything is visible. There's no cutouts. There's no background is not gone yet. So if I hold Alt or Option on Mac, click on your layer mask, now I can paint like this, or I can paste. So Control Shift V should paste. There you go. Control Shift V pastes it into place. So now you look over here, my mask is that layer. So again, I went to my mask image, copied, made a mask, viewed the mask, and then Control Shift pasted it into place. And now beautiful edges gone bye-bye. It's a little soft in some of these areas, like right there could be cleaned up. Pretty nice. All right, now we're ready to bring our Blender image in and start having some real fun with this. I'm going to delete this layer. Let's check it out. Is it noisy? It is a little noisy. There is still some noise on the highlights right there that don't look great. It's probably because I'm doing depth of field blur, which this will kind of amplify any noise you may have on the image. And the render time was almost 1 second shy of 4 minutes long. So not bad. I would definitely come back and re-render this at like 1,000 samples, maybe take 30 minutes or 40 minutes, and then I'd update it later, But for now, we'll just keep this version. So File, Save As, and I'm going to put it in my folder. No, where did I folder? Cyberpunk. Okay. UG Live. And I'm going to use the PNG format because it's higher quality than JPEG, and I'm going to choose RGBA. A is for alpha, and I'll do 16 bit color depth. And yeah, there we go. Save. Back to Photoshop. Open up my folder here and drag and drop my new background image. Now, drag and drop in layers works for me, but I have taught people who Photoshop will not let them do this, and I have not figured out why. If anyone knows, please tell me. Because dropping in layers is so handy, and some people just can't do it. I don't know why. Okay, now a little note here. I did unlock my base layer. Originally, these are locked. I forgot how to relock it, but I clicked the little padlock over here, which the background layer will always have. That allows you to actually move the background layer. Normally, you can't do that, but I can because I unlocked it. So now it's just a normal floating layer. Okay, so this looks pretty cool. Let's put a sky in the background because that is bothering me being so empty. So I'm going to go to my H drive, my graphics folder. I have a folder for stock photos. I think I have a few skies in here. Here we go. Let's find a nice moody sky that'll fit. That one's cool, but it's a little bit large. Just the scale of these clouds are a little bit much. I can tell they were zoomed in when they took that picture. This one's cool. Right there. And they're just clouds. We can stretch them. No one's going to know. Cool. Put this behind the city. Boom. Nice. Little glow. Looks cool. And you need to blur this because remember, the city is blurred. The cloud should be blurred too, equally, if not a little bit more. So filter, let's do a good old-fashioned Gaussian blur. Yeah, that fits. That looks good. It doesn't stand out because it's weird if you have your fake background as depth of, lens blurred, which is good, but then your far background is not blurred the same. It doesn't work. So you got to be consistent with your blurring and make sure that blur increases as it goes back. So if you're doing fake blurring in Photoshop, if something is twice as far back, it should be like 4 times blurrier, I guess. So keep that in mind. Oh, look at that beautiful shiny car. With more samples, it'll look even more shiny. Okay, so they are just floating on top of the ground. There's no shadows, no contact shadows. This is a big deal in composites. You got to put your people in the world. They need to be touching the surface. There needs to be shadow. There needs to be some reflection if you can manage to pull that off. Yeah, so let's do that. I'm going to make a layer underneath them. So the top layer is them. I'm going to try to be a good Photoshopper and name my layers, which I almost never do. I'm going to just name it people. I don't know why. This one, background. So when I look at it, my brain can instantly read and be like, people, background. Okay, I know what I'm looking at. And of course, sky. So a new blank layer, right underneath people. And this will be my shadow layer. So I'm just going to use a black brush. I'm going to paint right underneath their feet. I usually do about 2 different passes of shadows like this. I'll do a very small micro shadow, which I call a contact shadow. That's where they're touching. And then I'll do a larger shadow, which is like cast from surrounding lights. So let's do B for brush. And we're going to shrink our brush. We're going to make it flat. So you can actually shrink the aspect ratio of your brush to be that. See, it's not a circle anymore. It's a little dash, which works because now it's kind of it looks like little bullet holes, right? It's mostly going in perspective with our shot. So I'm going to flatten it out, make it a little bit softer, maybe halfway soft. The edges are a little bit blurred. Cool. Now I'm going to paint it full opacity, and then I'm going to turn that layer, the whole layer opacity down a little bit if I want. So wherever anything is touching the ground, I'm going to lightly paint a little blob of black. Very, very close to where they are actually contacting the surface. Like so. I'm holding shift, by the way, to just kind of repeatedly draw a little straight A to B, point A to point B lines. I want to make this one softer. Boop. Nice. Don't get carried away. Okay, go back to 50%. Look at these platforms. Whew. Could not walk in that. Cool. Next. So much more work when there's multiple people. There. Little blob there. Looks a little janky. There you go. Geez, how many feet do we got here? Is that all of them? Okay, finally. All right, so let's check it out. What do we actually make here? We just added a slight black point that's touching the ground. And I'm going to turn the opacity down to like 70%, which you can, by the way, hit number 7 on your number row on your keyboard, and it'll instantly jump to that percentage. So if you hit 9, it goes to 90. If you hit 2, it goes to 20. And you can do double numbers too, like 85 really quick together, and it'll do 85% opacity. Okay, and now let's do the larger, more softer shadow layer. And because I'm a control freak, I'm going to do it on its own layer so I can control that separately. So let's do this all over again, but a little bit different. Brush, make it super soft, a little bit larger. And I'm going to paint with opacity values for this one. So I'm going to put my opacity at like 40%. So hit number 4 on your number row. And now I can paint. Now, if I want to make it darker, I can paint over itself and it'll get darker like that. If I do some blobs, her heel is off the ground. So don't go far under her shoe like that. There, we got toe touching. Something right there for that sword. My brush might be a little big. I'll size it down a little bit. And you can size your brush up and down with the left and right brackets on your keyboard. Right above your enter key. Not commonly used, but they're very handy in Photoshop. And you do need to be aware of where your lighting is coming from. In this photo, it's a little unclear. There's not a strong light source. It's just kind of ambient light at nighttime from street lights and the moon, I guess. So in this photo, this composite is not a great example of how to mimic lighting from a real world. Usually in my photos, I have a stronger, more obvious light source. Big one. Bigger means softer. See how that's really soft? It's looking better. Look at that. It looks pretty nice. Kind of right off the bat, the human mind is like, yes, they're standing on that ground. More than before, at least. Shadow on the heel. And then if you want to make it real soft and more realistic, you can do like another pass, like with really large kind of blobs. And we'll turn these opacities down later. This is super messy. Bloop, 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 bloop. Oh, that's a little bit much. Nice. Look at that. Pretty good. So we got 3 layers. We got the tiny micro contact shadows. Then we got the larger ones on that. Now, if we're going to have cast shadows, like let's say there's an obvious, big old sign right here, and I did purposeful lighting that would like reflect that, then we could draw some cast shadows, which are the longer following shadows. And you might even want to draw a little guide for yourself. So I'm going to draw some red lines using the lines. Color will be bright red, so they're visible. And I'll make them about 3 pixels each so I can really see them. Let's say our light source is this crate right here. So we got line and draw it back to that origin point every time so that when we draw our cast shadows, we'll know where they're coming from. Like that, or whatever helps you. Okay. Cool. That was cool. Laser scanning them. And we're going to delete these layers. You can even put them in a folder to clean your layers up. So these are shadow layers. Where's my first? There we go. Line 1 to line 7. Select them all with shift and then click the folder button and boom, you got them in a folder. So I'm going to make some cast shadows just for practice. And we're going to go make them soft, and I'm going to make it a little bit fuller. There we go. I'm going to click below their foot, and I'm holding shift, and I'm following my lines that I already drew.
Very cool.
Cool, and make sure to make them spread out with 3D perspective. As it gets closer to the camera, it's going to spread out more. Over here, it's a little bit tighter. So that's okay. And maybe another little brush over to fill in the middle. Also, I found that the Photoshop soft brush was not soft enough for me. So I made my own super soft brushes, which have even more fall off. They're really tiny. Maybe I can make them larger. Let me see. Thumbnail size, where is that? Yeah, I won't bother with it. But anyway, I made my own custom brushes that have like a dot in the middle and really soft fall off. And they're great for shadow like this. So see how soft that is? It's very subtle. And those are good for retouching. They're good for shadows, glows, all kinds of stuff. Cool. So we've got this real rough shadow layer. We can Gaussian blur it to get rid of some of these striping, which because my brush was at 40%. So when I painted over itself, it layers. So we could blur it with Gaussian blur or even directional blur. Just get rid of some of that. Yeah, like that. And shadows are often not the darkest thing in the scene. So sometimes you may not want it to be 100% black. You want it to show a little bit. Because if there's any counter light coming from this side, it will fill in the shadows and brighten them up. So that's not going to be 100% like that. It may be like that. It's a weak little shadow or a little bit stronger. So there's a lot of ways you can. That looks pretty cool. Although it's weird because my brain's like, whoa, is it that street light? It can't be because there's street lights over on the other side too. So not really photographically accurate there. But I will add some forward-facing shadows, I think. So let's delete this. Make a new layer. I'm going to call this cast shadow. And then delete my laser lines there. And I'll make a new one. Some shadows coming from this back point here. So I'm going to try and keep it to where their feet are. Like I'm trying to touch their feet with my line. That sounds creepy. Like that. Cool. The edge of his shoe is right there. Awesome. Okay. So group those together to clean up our layers. I have gotten up to over 100 layers before in composites. It gets ridiculous. And the Photoshop files get exponentially big. I don't know why Adobe is so obsessed with like super uncompressed raw data because the Photoshop files get unwieldy big. I've had some that are like in the like 4, 5, 6 gigabytes. And you actually have to save it as a separate file format. It's too big for a PSD. It has to be a PSB. What is it? Steven, you know what that stands for? The B part?
Sorry, I wasn't listening.
When your Photoshop file gets above 4 gigabytes, it has to be a PSB.
PS big.
What
Photoshop
is it?
big.
What
big.
Is it be?
Big.
Oh, big.
Photoshop big. Yeah.
Wow. Sounds really informal.
It's kind of like, remember WYSIWYG? Or what was the thing that we did for scanning photographs? What was that technology called? Twain technology.
Oh, wow. That's taking it back.
Way back. Technology without any interesting name.
Twain, man. I used to scan my drawings all the time, so that brings you back. I haven't heard that word in years. Okay. So I'm trying to keep in perspective and stay on the edge of their shoes because that's what cuts off the light. Oops. Use my shift. There we go. That's where shift really comes in handy, drawing perfectly straight lines. Awesome. And then I'm gonna use one of my super soft brushes here to do another little pass over.
Is there a sitcom based on cosplayers?
There is one. It's like a costume design show, not sitcom though. Not that I know of.
Okay, this should
be pretty good. Cosplayers are interesting people.
Yeah.
All right, so this is super harsh and not natural looking, so we can blur it. But the closer you get to the camera, the blurrier it should be, right? Because shadows go outwards and they disperse. I think it's the inverse square law, where light spreads out as it goes over, traverses distance. It spreads out. So we can do that by doing one of the awesome blur filters. I love the blur gallery. These are some unsung heroes of Photoshop. They're so amazing what they can do. So I'm going to do, I'll do field blur, which basically gives you a horizontal. Oh no, sorry, not field blur. It's oh, we cancel that. Tilt and shift. So tilt shift is really cool. The middle bar is not blurred. The outer bars on both sides, because it's symmetrical, are getting blurrier, and then the outside region is maximum blurred. So that's good for us because I'm going to put this right here. So where their feet are, the shadow is not really going to be blurred much. But then pretty soon after that, it's going to start getting blurred, and then the maximum blur is going to be at the bottom of the photo. Let's turn it up, and you'll see what I'm talking about. There we go. Oh, yeah, look at that. Sweet. Very photorealistic, I think. Cool. So you can control the starting point and the end point, which I love. Great, I love that. Let it apply itself, and boom, nice fall off blur. That looks a little weird right there. I should probably erase that, but Let's use my erase tool.
All right.
A little smaller. There you go. So right here is not really accurate. Cool. Okay, so yeah, those blur gallery ones are awesome. There is like a radial blur that goes kind of in a circle. There's field blur where you can draw little points in your scene, and based on the area around that point, it'll be blurrier. And then the point next to it can be less blurry, and the blur you can shift blur around. It's really cool. Then there's of course spin blur, and path blur is great for motion. You can draw literal arrows, curvy arrows that will do motion blur in those directions. And I've used that so many times with action shots and cool fight scene poses. Okay, so this is looking pretty cool, but it's still kind of flat and boring. So let's add some depth to it. One of my favorite ways to add instant style to any photo is a LUT, or a lookup table. There is an adjustment layer that is basically a non-destructive adjustment layer that will allow you to load a LUT, L-U-T. So it's called color lookup. And in it, the Photoshop comes preloaded with about 20 of these. And I like to do is click on the first one and use my arrows on my keyboard just to filter through them. And you might be amazed. Look at that. That looks awesome. But it's not cyberpunk colors. Sounds nice. Blue. Desaturated. Ew. That's a very nice post-apocalyptic contrast. That one's really cool, but it's kind of flat. But I love those nighttime tones. So what this is doing is the adjustment layer is on top. It is the topmost filter. Essentially, it's a filter, a very professional level Instagram filter, if you will. And it's grabbing all the colors RGB below it, and it's shifting them to another set of RGB values that were sampled from another photo. So you can actually make your own LUTs. If you make a photo composite, or just any kind of edit of a portrait, and you're using a bunch of adjustment layers, it's what you have to do. You have to use adjustment layers in your layers panel, and you get a really interesting colored look or contrast or film emulation. You can save that as a LUT file and use that in Photoshop or Premiere, which is really fun. So you can colorize video too. And yeah, LUTs are really, really cool. I really like to use them. I'm trying to find a good one that has some good color. Like that one's pretty strong. That pink is really clipping. Ooh. You can tone these down too if you like it, but it's just too intense. Like that one's really intense. You can just turn the opacity down to 25% or 51%. So before, after. Pretty cool. Kind of kills my blues. There's a lot of purple in that one. Trying to find one that has both the colors that I like. And you can find a bunch of free LUT packs too online. You can download it and load them into Adobe Photoshop and Premiere if you do video. I'm pretty picky with this one because I want the blue and the purple. That one's cool. Just gives some contrast. It doesn't do a whole lot to the colors. Okay, let's get our emissions pass from Blender and bring it into Photoshop and do some post glare. So here's our render. Here's our view layer. These are our different passes. So we've got emission. We've got ambient occlusion. We got the shadows, mist. Oh, there's our mist. Ooh, look at that. Isn't that beautiful? I love mist. So we can bring this into Photoshop also and use it to give some atmosphere. I'll do this one first. So save as. I'll just do PNG, normal RGB here, nothing fancy. And I'll do this as mist, save. And then we're going to do emissions. Emit, save. Anything else in here worth getting? I don't know if I want to play with AO. I don't know. It's already kind of a dark, gritty scene. This looks very Sin City, right? It's just real gritty. A lot of blacks. All right, so let's bring in those passes here. So here's the emission pass, enter, and then mist, enter. So let's hide the mist. Let's do the emissions first. And when you have images like this that are pure black, but there's bright colors on top, like highlights or magic particles or embers, smoke, you'd put it on screen blend mode. So go to your blend mode of that layer and put it on screen. And now the black pixels are gone essentially, and anything above 50% gray up to pure white is visible. So it hides the black. Now this is actually popping over our people because we need to put it below their layer. So drop it down there. Cool. Now it's below. So the emissions are layering on top of the already rendered emissions. So there's kind of a double. It makes them brighter. But let's make a duplicate of this layer by pressing Control J so that now we have 2 emissions. And let's blur this one. So I'm just going to do a good old Gaussian blur. Nice, look at that. Nice hazy blur. Looks great. So before, after. Cool. I like it. You might even turn off that first duplicate. This duplicate is not being filtered at all. It's just on top of itself. So turn that off. Now we only have the original background render from Blender and the blurred versions of the highlights. Just adding some haze. You can also custom paint glare real easily. Make a top layer on top of whatever you want to add haze to. B for brush and get the softest brush you can find. I made my super soft brushes. I need to put a download for those. And put your layer. We're gonna paintbrush glary blurs on top. Put it as screen mode, and now you can paint any bright color you want. So yellow, 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 yellow there, yellow there. Let's do some blues. Blue. Not a lot of blue in these ads. Add some blue in the streetlights. Why not? That looks cool. Let's get some red, orangey red. Right, oops, right there. Below this 18-wheeler of the future. Also there. Cool. So let's do it before and after that little glare layer we just painted super fast. Look at that. Nice. I like that a lot. I do that all the time. I do so many glare layer paints on my stuff. It just adds that beautiful glare that is photorealistic. I do this for light details on costumes. Like if there's any LEDs in a costume, I'll paint over that area and add a nice glare. I've done it with lightsabers, laser blasts. I mean, you can draw a laser blast that way. You just have to make it solid in the middle. Can't see any glowing details on their costumes right here, but I know their masks are glowing a little bit. Cool. So we got a glare layer going on. Let's do the mist pass, which we've hidden here. And you want your color lookup to be on top. Pretty much always on top. So what happens if we put our mist layer on screen mode and put it behind them? We basically have just the white pixels layering over everything, which kind of kills our whole scene. But let's turn it down. Let's have it real low. Like in 40%, maybe 30% opacity. And I'm going to brighten it so that there'll be more coverage of the mist. That's kind of building up. Look at that. Isn't that cool? Yoop. Like so. And I'm going to try to colorize it. So instead of it being white and black, which you can't really see, instead of being white and black, I'm going to try and do like pink. Let's see if it'll work. So put it back to 30%. How do I need to do? Oh, color ramp. It's a gradient map is what it is. Gradient map. And then this little button here is really great because it'll basically make your gradient. It'll make your adjustment layer only apply to what's directly below it, which is the mist pass. So right now we got this gradient map, which grabs all your darkest to lightest values in your image, whatever's below it, and it gives you can remap the colors. So the darkest pixels will be this color, which I don't want that. I don't want it to be black. And the brightest pixels will be white, which it already is. This is actually what it already is right now. But I want it to be not white. I want it to be a color. So let's try pink. Oh, light blue, actually. I like that. That's cool. And we can slide it up or down, basically giving it more contrast. There's already a lot of contrast applied to it. So let's just leave it like that. So this is what, let's see, I think I need to folder these because they're connected. Yeah, it adds a little bit of haze background. That's a good trick. Maybe not for this image, but it's a nice one to have. Oh, we didn't do any glow on these pink circles. Shame. Pink. Smaller brush size. Just paint real messy over the glowing areas. If it's closer to the lens, make it a bigger glare. These are a little bit further away, so a little blob there, blob, 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 blob. Okay, great. And let's get some blue over here and some red. And there's some yellow right here. You can make shines on surfaces that are glowing. Just click a bunch of times in that area and it'll really pop. Cool. Great. And the good thing about having these as separate layers is you have total control. You can turn it up or down. You could even mask it if you need to. Like sometimes I'll mask a adjustment layer that I like what it's doing, but there's one area that's problematic. Like the side of this girl's face is just so pink. It's almost distracting and the colors are getting a little weird. So that's because the LUT is really enhancing those pinks. So I can use mask on the LUT, just paint black on the mask and it'll basically hide it. Make sure I'm doing the right thing. I'm using my brush tool, black, yeah. There we go. So this is the mask now. Everything white is still applied, black is hidden. So the LUT is doing everything except for her arm and her face. Good way to get control. We need some foreground smoke because there's got to be some steamy smoke in front of us. That's another great way to give some life to your composites is add some something in the foreground. It could be an object like a fence. It can be a tree, like a blurry tree. You're looking through some leaves. You can, of course, smoke and fog is the easy and fun one. That I try not to overdo because I love smoke and fog. So to do that, I'm going to, there's tons of overlays. You can find so many overlay images of smoke. It's ridiculous. So if those get the look you want, then use those. But I found a new technique that I like to use. I like to paint white haziness in like this. Oop, whoa, what did I just do? I pressed the letter Q, went to the quick mask mode somehow. So I'm going to paint in some more heavy on the corners right there like a vignette. And then I'm going to make a mask, and I'm going to paint with a brush that I made out of a cloud image. Let me show you what this looks like. I'll show you it in a new file. This is a cloud brush. Ooh, it's really big. And what happens is I have the brush settings to randomly rotate, randomly jitter, randomly change the opacity, and yeah, so it's great. I mean, that looks like real smoke, you know? It's got just a good amount of variety to where as it rotates, it looks like it's not the same image being tiled over and over. And to do brush settings, you go to your brush settings tab, and you got all these awesome settings. You can layer them with another brush. You can use the pin pressure of your stylus to do more opacity or less. There's a bunch of things that I barely even use, but I love shape dynamics and scattering are really helpful. So this is my smoke brush. And I think I have that as a free download on one of my YouTube videos. But I'm just basically going to mask away like this, my boring hazy layer, which gives some nice texture. See, it's kind of smoky, kind of billowy. And if I wanted to come back, I can turn my brush from black to white, which, remember, white masking brings something back in. A little bit more right here. Make sure it's actually covering up their feet a little bit. If you cannot get contact shadows right, or if the ground you're using doesn't look great, you got to cover it up with a bunch of smoke or lens flare or something. Magic energy particles. You can always cover up the feet in creative ways, so you don't have to do the hardest part of a composite is placing them into your scene. So this is my smoke. Yeah. Before it's just a bunch of blacks, just a bunch of black pixels. And I think that breaks up the darkness a lot. Gives a little bit of atmosphere. Cool. Okay. Let's see. What else can we do here?
No questions.
Yeah, I was looking for some questions over there. If you'll have any, please ask. We got this.
And we've got 5 minutes left.
Oh, okay. Oh, nice. That worked out good. I was wondering how much time do I have left? Oh, I'm pretty much done with this composite. There's always little fine touches you can do to bring life to something. A lot of them include adjustment layers or brushing on things. I haven't done any retouching. So one easy way to do retouching to smooth out skin, if you want to, you can leave it, gritty and real. But if you want to smooth things out, I like to use the surface blur filter, which is really good. I'll go to a textured area here. You can see a little bit of texture. Look at the shadow from her zipper. That's cool. So select your layer, go to filter, blur, and surface blur. Now this will apply to everything because we don't have a selection made. If I want to be more meticulous, I'll grab just the skin areas and then I'll use this filter and it'll be more targeted. But right now it's just over everything. So you can see instantly, it doesn't blur the sharp edges, which we want, like the pants. That's not blurred, but the skin texture is, and it's based on a threshold. So as you turn your threshold up higher and higher, it blurs more. But if you have it down to like the tens, around 10 and the teens, it generally just gets skin textures, which is nice. So before, after, boom, one click retouching. Yeah, so I think there's a lot smoother on the skin and looks good. I like to sometimes flatten everything and give it a unsharp mask, which adds a little bit of a punch. Flattening everything freaks me out because you lose everything, the layers. So you really want to do that as a last finish resort. And don't do it to your PSD file, this file. Do it to an exported JPEG just to be safe. I really wish Photoshop would allow these filters to be adjustment layers. That would be really cool. That way I could have an adjustment layer of sharpening, which I could always go back and tweak. Same with these guys, the distortion and things like that. But we don't have that yet. And what do I know about programming? Pretty much nothing. You could add some motion blur to some of these ships if you want. I'm going to go to my Blender layer, rasterize it because it's still a smart layer. There we go. Oh, yeah. So speaking of remembering tools, there are a ton of techniques I just went over. Merges all and save layers. I'm scared to try that. Control, Alt, Shift. Oh my gosh, that's the biggest key. Oh, wow. So it made everything into its own layer, right? Is that what happened?
Yep. So it merges it merges all visible layers together.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but maintains all your other layers.
Oh, cool. Wow. That's also the biggest key combo I've ever done in my life. I've never done it before. So now we have this top layer, which is everything, right? Combined into one. Oh, I turned something off. What did I turn off? I don't remember. Anyway, let's grab this. And I will do sharpen and then unsharpen mask. This adds a nice level of grit, which is good for some types of photos, but not all. If it's a beauty shot, you don't want to do this. It's not really glamorous, but it adds a little extra pop. What was I saying? Oh, yeah. So speaking of remembering things, Charles, Jack of all trades, was talking about remembering tools that I've taught him in the past. Using these things regularly is really the only way to truly know them for the future. If you don't use them, you will lose them. You will forget stuff if you don't use it regularly. So even if you are doing a composite for practicing sake every week, whatever you got to do, you got to do it. Because if you don't use it, you'll lose it. And sometimes people are like, I'll never remember all those keyboard shortcuts that you use in Blender, because Blender is very keyboard shortcut heavy, and there's no getting around it. It's just how it works. I'm sure other programs like is Lightwave like that, Steven?
Well, it is, but not as much as Blender.
Yeah, Blender is just the keyboard city. And where is this line coming from? Oh my gosh, I can't find it. It got blurred. I think this was inside my shadow layer. Oh my gosh, it was. Erase. Okay, that's weird. What was I saying? So keyboard shortcuts. Yeah. So the people say, I'll never remember all that. How do you know all these things? It's just because I've done this for years and I use those keyboard shortcuts over and over. And I've gotten new awesome plugins and stuff that does cool tricks, but I don't use it often. And every month I have to use it that one special time. I forget how to use it because I haven't used it. So just a little reality check on learning things. It does take time and practice. It's not going to be one time and you'll never forget it. So before we end, does anybody have any questions? Steven, anything you wanted to ask or bring up? Or
no, I can't. Let me go ahead and switch this on over to, I can't think of anything. This is fabulous. Was this helpful for everyone online there?
Give us some feedback, people. Wake up.
Yes, very much so.
That looks awesome. I love that LUT. It's very intense, but it looks so cool.
What an excellent, well-paced from Essence.
Thank you.
Information-packed presentation. Glad you enjoyed it.
Here, if you like my teaching style, definitely check out my YouTube channel. I've gotten a lot of feedback from watchers that say, "Hey, I really like how you teach. I like how you explain things," and I just love to help people and like to teach. So I guess I'm decent at
it. Can Daniel come back and play? Well, if Daniel's a good boy, he can come back and play.
And y'all can watch this later. I don't know how, but you can watch this later if you need a little refresher.
Right. I'll export it out from Twitch, and then I'll put that up on YouTube. Now, if anybody, this is fantastic. This is great. Now, if we do these every week normally, and so if you are interested in watching all the videos that this particular channel has available to you, it's like a $4 a month fee on Twitch. It's a standard fee for basically subscribing, and then you have access to everything that I've recorded on there, hundreds of videos, and it's well worth it. Looking at some questions here as great demo, thanks. Okay, so here is Daniel Grove's
thank you
YouTube channel. Definitely go check that out.
Yeah, I have it organized by playlist. So if you go to playlist, you'll see a Photoshop, Blender, Lightroom, photography. There's different categories like that.
And I'm looking at looking for your.
It's pretty great. I just hit over 10,000 subscribers like a month or two ago, so that was really exciting.
Great, fantastic. Now here's Daniel Grove's website. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and pull that up there. So definitely go check that out.
Thank you. Great stuff. Oh, this is wonderful. Thank you very much, Daniel, and thank you all for coming. This is. We got a good attendance too as well. Yeah. So it's great to see everybody. We'll be now every month we have a Photoshop users group meeting. I'm setting up the next presenter, so I will. And if you signed up through Eventbrite, you will be notified of our next meeting, what it'll be about. Okay. Cool. This is fantastic. All right, so Daniel, thank you again. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to end the broadcast, but you can stay on here on StreamYard. And everybody, thank you so much again. I'm going to end the broadcast with Twitch, and I will keep you informed of our next meeting. Cool. Thank you, guys. It was fun.